"Dad, it's Mom," Eva exclaimed, handing her phone to her father. Pete smiled as he took the phone from his daughter. He guessed what would be discussed in this conversation, but this was his first conversation with his wife this morning, and he was looking forward to her call. He heard the voice of his wife, Joan. "Hi, darling. Can my sweet bear look after a dozen teenagers today?" "I think I can do it," Pete replied. "Eva and the girls have been planning this for a couple of weeks now, so all I have to do is follow their instructions. They're 19 or 20 years old, so it's not like running after a bunch of kids. Have you prepared the pool the way she wanted?" "Yes, yes. And sun loungers, and a bar, and a grill. I also prepared the products. I did all this while you were away. Next year, it's your turn to be the educator." "Ha! Don't say you weren't looking forward to it. You'll be surrounded by a dozen teenage girls in bikinis all day. I bet you'll be in full combat readiness when I arrive." "Well, don't forget that one of them is our daughter, and two more are almost like family. I don't need a dozen girls in bikinis to want you. I want you all the time, every day." "I know, and I like it." "Was the conference useful?" "Yes." "Very informative," Joan replied. She worked for a mid-sized investment firm in a suburb of Nashville, Tennessee. She had been there for 6 years as a senior investment consultant. "Great, dear. Have a nice trip from San Jose." "Thank you. See you later this evening." "I love you, Joan." "I love you too, Pete." Eve rolled her eyes, but she was actually glad that her parents still loved each other so much after 25 years of marriage. She hoped that it would be the same in her own future family. The word bear crept into Pete's head. Once upon a time, he was his wife's beloved before the birth of children. Then daddy until their oldest went to college. And now, for several years now, Teddy Bear. He didn't mind. Joan loved to cuddle next to him in bed and often said that she loved to hug her bear, so he could only rejoice. For the last couple of days, he, his daughter, and her two best friends had been preparing everything for today's party. With only 2 weeks left before college started, Eva decided to throw a huge party before most of the group left for their respective universities in different parts of the South. Eve herself was in her 3rd year of medical school at Vanderbilt University, about 20 miles north of their home in Franklin. She lived in student apartments on campus with her longtime girlfriends. Like her mother, Eva was pretty, short about 168 centimeters and curvy. Lily and Carrie, her best friends, also came for the night and helped in the morning. Lily is a tall, slender, and very attractive African-American woman with beautiful warm pecan skin and gorgeous long curly hair. With a height of 178 centimeters, she was slightly taller than Pete, for which she teased him tirelessly. He was not offended after all. He really adored her, considering her almost his own daughter. She and Eva had been close friends since 3rd grade. Lily attended Vanderbilt on an athletic scholarship, which covered part of her tuition costs. She has run 800m, 1,500m, and mile distances. She once ran with Pete, but in high school he admitted that he could not keep up with her pace and only hindered her development. She missed running together. The girl was very smart. She studied at the Faculty of Mathematics and Computer Science. Carrie, Eve's second friend, was her first friend in elementary school. They met when Carrie dropped the sandwich the maid had prepared for her, and Eve shared half of hers with her. When Lily came into their lives, the three of them became the Three Musketeers and were almost inseparable. Carrie scored a 1,300 on the SAT and, thanks to money and her old money family's longtime connections, got into Vanderbilt. Her friends joked that with her background, she could have scored 600 points, she would still have been accepted. At school, her classmates jokingly awarded her the title most likely to buy her own island, because Carrie was from a very wealthy family. She looked like a little doll blonde with a cute figure and only 157 centimeters tall. All three of them were like sisters, and Pete loved it when they gathered at his house. Under the pool deck, next to the outdoor kitchen built into the 2-story guest house that Pete had largely built himself over several years, everything was ready for guests, with the table set, snacks, and refreshments ready. It was mid-August, a beautiful day. The sun loungers were already in place, the water in the pool was sparkling, and the lawn was perfectly trimmed. Eva had clearly inherited her mother's talent for event planning and had been keeping her father busy for the last 2 days. She was his little princess and often showed him off whenever the opportunity arose. Pete, being quite modest, only smiled, but in his heart he knew that he could do a lot. He just didn't like to brag. Creating and running his own consulting firm brought him confidence in his abilities, but also taught him to control himself. She assumed that if a vote was held among her friends' fathers to determine whose father was the coolest, then the majority of votes would be given to her dad. When everyone had gathered and Pete had helped serve the refreshments and soft drinks, he said, "Well, girls, I went into the house. If you need anything, call me." Lily asked, "Are you sure you don't want to have lunch with us?" "Thank you, Lily, but this is your holiday. Everything is fine." This day was for girls a hen party before the school year. Pete went about his business in the office, from where he could see the gazebo and part of the pool. But as soon as the girls took off their capes and clothes, exposing their bikinis, he moved into the living room so as not to look like a howling wolf and not disturb them. He turned on the Atlanta Braves baseball game, which, as usual, was losing, and had been watching calmly for about 20 minutes when noise and screams came from the direction of the pool. He jumped up to check what happened and saw a tall, big man grab Carrie by the wrist and forcefully drag her somewhere. The other girls surrounded them and screamed for him to let her go. Pete immediately rushed into the yard and, running up to the scene, shouted, "Hey, idiot, release her immediately." The guy, about 6 feet tall, grinned, not even thinking about slowing down, and continued to drag Carrie around like a rag doll. Sweet little Carrie weighed about 50 kilograms, and this big guy was twice as heavy. The girls were screaming, some were already filming everything on their phones. As Pete approached, the stranger pushed Lily away. It swayed, and the side of its head collided with Pete, hitting him on the nose. Pete's eyes darkened for a moment, but he quickly came to his senses, and, standing between Carrie, the guy, and the gate leading into the yard, he shouted, "Let her go, idiot." He tried to move the big man's hand away, but he, hearing the threat, freed Carrie only for a second to hit Pete with his left. This was his first mistake. Pete dodged, leaning down, and hit the big man in the solar plexus with all his might. A strangled sound escaped from the guy's mouth, and his lungs seemed empty. He bent over, forced to let go of Carrie. Without hesitating for a second, Pete delivered a sharp knee strike to the groin, and he fell to all fours. "Get the hell out of my yard, asshole," Pete gasped. The guy slowly rose to his feet and muttered, "And you're not such a wimp as my father thinks you are. I'll take pleasure in pulling you by the collar." Pete frowned, wondering how this goon knew anything about him. But there was no time to think. The guy swung again, and Pete dodged the sweeping blow. The first flew past, and Pete, trying not to lose his composure, pushed his opponent, knocking out his knee. He fell onto his back with a crash. "Just leave," Pete warned. "I don't want to cause you serious injuries." Several of the girls giggled loudly as they heard Pete threaten the much taller guy, who was already looking like a complete fool. Rising to his feet with difficulty, the big man hissed, "You move faster than my father said about you. He calls you Weak Bear." Pete shuddered. How did he know the nickname Teddy Bear? But he didn't say that about his wife. The big man rushed at him again, and Pete realized it was time to end the fight. The guy was clearly out of his league. He tried to hit again, but Pete dodged without any problems. Seeing an opportunity, Pete delivered a powerful series of blows to his opponent's right side where the liver and kidney are located. It was perhaps one of the hardest blows Pete had ever thrown in hand-to-hand combat. He fell down like a bag of sand. About 45 seconds passed before he was able to rise to his hands and knees. The girls weren't laughing anymore. When he finally stood up, staggering, Pete twisted his arm behind his back, pressing on his fingers to such an extent that he almost broke them. Then he dragged him to the gate and pushed him out onto the driveway. The young man walked slowly, like an old man, rubbing his side, to his car. But even after that, he could not restrain himself from insults. You can call your wife darling as much as you like. My father calls her sweet girl. Surprised? Sometimes she supposedly goes on a business trip and spends a couple of days relaxing in a hotel with its huge size right here in the city. Of course, Pete answered dryly. If you want to continue lying, we can go back to the yard and continue the conversation in private. I'm not interested in listening to your bullshit. Is it true? Well, wait, let's see some more. I'll believe it when I see the evidence in my hands. Although, even then I suspect that you are making it all up. The guy grinned wryly, walked to Carrie's car, and began to pound the hood with his fists in anger, leaving dents. The girls screamed, making gestures at him and shouting curses. And Pete just clenched his fists and exhaled noisily. The big man somehow climbed into his BMW and, starting the engine, disappeared with a squeal of tires. Pete turned around and saw that several girls were giving him the finger after the guy was leaving, and several more had a recording of what happened on their phones. Girls, that's it, the show is over. Go back to the house, Pete said sternly. And please, don't post the video anywhere yet. Don't forward it to anyone. Let's first discuss what to do next, okay? Dad, your nose is bleeding, Eve exclaimed. At that very moment, Lily began to give instructions. Quickly vacate this sun lounger. We need shade. Eva, bring him a clean shirt. Carrie, bring the ice pack. Sitting Pete down on a lounge chair under an umbrella, Lily pressed his bloody shirt to his nose. So all the girls in bikinis had the opportunity to see the toned torso of this man, nearly 50, whom they never expected to see in the role of hand-to-hand fighter. A couple of girls immediately rushed to get drinks. Someone tried to lay Pete on his back. The rest stood nearby and animatedly whispered, still in shock from what had happened. A minute later, Eve and Carrie returned. Pete put ice on his nose and asked, "Who is this bastard anyway? How can you raise such a bastard?" Carrie, "What did he want from you?" "Dad, this," Eva answered, "is Ricky Farmington, the son of Andrew Farmington, Mom's boss." "Damn," Pete said, because the guy's words suddenly sounded much more alarming. Now, this is not just an arrogant boy, but someone who may own or have access to real information. Carrie added, "He came for me because we went on a date once a couple of weeks ago, and when he wanted to ask me out again, I refused. And I tried to do it politely, but he reacted rudely. I have no idea how he found me here. Probably one of the girls mentioned our party on social networks." She looked around at her friends. "Please, let's stop posting on the internet where we are and what we are doing." Then she looked at Pete. "Mr. Clark, how did your nose start bleeding? He didn't even lay a finger on you." "I think it happened when I was trying to protect you, Lily. She fell right on top of me, and we collided so that her head crashed into my nose," Pete said, looking at Lily with a smile. "Sorry, Dad," Lily sighed. She had long been accustomed to calling him Dad. "When he pushed me, you ran up to catch me, but we collided. I didn't want this." Pete shook her hand. "It's okay. It's not your fault. It doesn't look like I have a fracture. It just hurts." The girls sighed with relief. Pete looked at all the girls. "I know it's a lot to ask, but please don't share this video with anyone or post it on the internet. No posts on social networks, no sending to friends. First, let's decide what to do." "But Dad," Eva intervened, "you're not to blame for anything. And judging by how quickly you put him down, if you wanted, you could even cripple him." "First of all," Pete answered calmly, "I don't want such gossip about your mother to get on the internet. We know that this is nonsense, but if you want, you can falsify any evidence base. And secondly, this psycho with such and such nerves may decide to take revenge and hunt down one of you after classes or a movie session. He'll come from behind and hit you. Of course, he will be arrested later, but the damage could be serious. I don't want anyone to take risks." Eva asked, "Are you going to call the police?" "I think so. You don't have to file a report right away, but you do need to at least document what happened. He attacked Carrie and Lily, tried to attack me. scratched your car, Carrie, and generally broke in without an invitation. You'll have to testify, but it won't last long. Sorry to interrupt the fun a bit. You can continue to rest once everything is finalized." Pete then turned to Carrie. "How's your wrist?" "I think everything is fine, it just hurts a little." "There will probably be a bruise." Pete nodded, and Carrie asked, "Mr. Roman 11, how do you know how to fight like that? This guy is tall and trained. I know he has won fights, and you literally smashed him to the floor." "Actually, nothing special. Are you really interested in listening?" A dozen girls in bikinis nodded in unison. And even this looked funny. Everything was in sync, like cheerleaders. Pete shrugged. "When I was in high school, I was sometimes made fun of for being short. I knew I wouldn't grow taller because both of my parents were short. I was involved in athletics then, running middle distance in school, and then cross-country in high school. I was quite successful, even competing in the state championship. But one day in my senior year, I went to the cinema with a girl, and on the way out, two guys ran into us. They shouted something, pushed, and showed off. I didn't want to start a fight right on the date, so I endured it. Fortunately, my friends noticed us and intervened, and the two retreated, but I really didn't like it. I told my father everything, and the next day he signed me up for a martial arts class in Knoxville. Said, "Be as good as you can, but don't get into trouble. Only self-defense for yourself and others." I promised him and went to classes twice a week until I went to college at Georgia Tech. Then, when I was studying in Atlanta, I found a school there that taught several areas at once: Silat, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu. It was not a narrowly focused school, but rather a self-defense center. The trainers there were wonderful, especially one old man my height and his daughter, about 30 years old, about the same height as Eva. They taught classes together, and she was the best fighter I've ever seen. Fast, fearless, and very dangerous. I've seen her spar with big guys with black belts, and more often than not they couldn't even touch her. And if they touched it, they regretted it. I realized that I wanted to learn from her. So I studied there all 4 years, 2 to 4 lessons a week, and I trained well. When I married Joan and we were still living in Atlanta, I cut back to once a week. During the entire marriage, she never saw me in real sparring. All he knows is that I train in our basement. When you went to university, Eva, I started going to training again at the local school. I'm not as good as I was before, but I can still do a few things." "Dad, I had no idea," Eva said in surprise. "You didn't need to. Do you remember when we, in your 7th grade and Donan's 9th grade, went to Paris?" asked Pete. Eve nodded. "And remember how we went to a Moroccan restaurant in one dubious area? I told your mom that we better not go there, it's dangerous. But she convinced me. Yes, the restaurant turned out to be really good, but what happened when we were walking back to the car? Two people came up to us, one tall, the other shorter, and shouted something," said Eva. "You gave your mom the keys and told her to put Donnie and me in the car, start the engine, and honk the horn as soon as we were inside." "Yes, and I stayed to hold them back so you could get into the car. I knew that if anything happened, my mother would call the police, but who knows how quickly they would arrive in that area." "What happened next?" Lily intervened, who was also interested. I raised my hands, showing that I was not looking for a fight. But when he started approaching with a knife and shouted, "Money," I had to act. I stood up so that the tall one covered the short one. Then he knocked the knife out of the first one and immediately, without hesitation, plunged it into his side, right into the side of his knee. He screamed so loudly that I'm surprised you didn't hear. When the second one reached for his knife, I hit him. His knife flew to the side. But then the screams of the first one raised the alarm, and I saw their friends running from the back streets. 6 or 7 people. At this point, it became clear to me. I can cope alone with 2 people, but not with 8. So I rushed to the car, trusting that you had already started the engine. As soon as I heard the signal, I ran towards the sound as fast as I could. Then we left the parking lot amid the screams of these bandits, returned to our hotel, and your mother no longer asked why I didn't want to go there. That's the whole story, Pete finished. Your mom was already outside and ready to get going. I jumped into the front seat and told her to step on the gas. Since we got married, this is the only other time I've encountered anything like this until today. It was a little fiction. What he didn't tell them was how, after Donnie and Eve were born, shortly before moving to Nashville, he and Joan went out dancing one night when they were still living in Atlanta. There, they were approached by one of her former college boyfriends, Bobby Taylor, who was playing for the Atlanta Falcons at the time. Joan didn't think much of it, but when he asked her to dance and she accepted, Pete was furious. They only danced for a couple of minutes, but later, when Pete saw Bobby heading to the toilet, he followed him. In the restroom, this athlete, who played as a receiver and was about the same height as Ricky, grinned and began making comments about how he missed Joan and that maybe they would dance again today. Pete was not in the mood. When the ex was about to push Pete away to leave, Pete abruptly pushed him to the floor. The big man fell at an odd angle, landed on his hand, and broke his ulna, ending his playing season. The Falcons brought in another player who played so well that Bobby was traded to another team. No charges were brought. Pete continued to tell Eve's friends, so please don't send this video to anyone. By the end of today, there should be exactly 13 copies in existence, including me, and never more. Everyone promised Pete not to send anything to anyone. He hoped they would keep their word. I know this is a bit of a downer, but don't let it get you down. He's an asshole. Forget about him. Lily said, "You mean he's an asshole?" Pete smiled, and some of the girls laughed. He got up and went back into the house to call the police. When the policeman arrived, his reward was the sight of all these cute girls in swimsuits. They quickly covered themselves, and he asked to tell what happened. He examined Carrie's wrist, which was still red but not really seriously injured. Pete's nose had stopped bleeding, and he had already changed his clothes. Carrie's mother came because her father had not yet returned from his trip. The whole conversation took about half an hour. After the police car drove away, the party continued. Carrie hugged her mother and watched her go. Eve walked up to Pete and asked, "Dad, do you mind if we stay here before we go to Carrie? We were going to dance after dinner, but after what happened this afternoon, we'd rather dance here at our place tonight. Eva, this is your house. Of course, I don't mind. I like it when you're home." She hugged her father and returned to her friends. Pete watched the last Braves pitch. They lost, as usual. While he was watching, he received a message from Joan. "The plane has been delayed. I'll be back late." He sighed. The little seed of doubt began to bother him again, and he hated that feeling. Some of Rika's words were painfully reminiscent of the truth. Pete needed his wife to come back quickly so they could talk. After a while, he fired up the grill, wearing his "I like big buns and I cannot lie" apron that Eve, Lily, and Carrie had given him for Father's Day a couple of years ago. 3 young girls helped bring out the food, mostly Mexican. The 3 of them planned this menu. Eve asked Pete to grill something for them, and he readily agreed. We started with the usual chips, salsa, guacamole, and delicious chili con queso. Then came a huge salad of avocado, tomatoes, and assorted leafy vegetables, followed by Mexican corn, street roasted, but already off the cob. Pete grilled small sirloin steaks, shrimp, marinated chicken, or small tuna, steaks your choice. While he grilled, Pete prepared and poured non-alcoholic drinks for the girls, including a sangria made in advance with a good non-alcoholic Cabernet base. There were also non-alcoholic margaritas, pink champagne, non-alcoholic beer, plenty of sparkling water, and other age-appropriate drinks. He, of course, understood that many of them drink in college, but he did not want to host a party where minors would get drunk. When the grill was ready, the 3 sisters Eve, Lily, and Carrie did not accept Pete's objections and sat him down at the table to eat with them and their friends. After what happened during the day, it would be wrong to leave him alone. Pete happily shared the meal with them. After dinner, he fried churros and served them with melted chocolate for dipping as dessert. If desired, he also offered pina coladas, which he poured directly into real pineapples, cut in half and peeled. While he and the 3 girls cleared the table, Lily connected her phone to the Bluetooth speakers in the pool cabana and turned on some dance music. Pete thought it was cute, and at times even slightly erotic. It was nice to see all these beauties dancing with each other. I wish I could be so young again, he thought. When everything was put away, Pete was about to return to the chair in the living room, but Lily didn't let him go. Come on, Dad. There are 12 young girls just waiting to dance with you, but I will be the first. Once outside by the pool and dancing together, Pete said, "This is funny." As soon as I finished off one idiot, 12 pretty women immediately wanted to dance with me. Who would have thought? This should have been done a long time ago. It's not because you beat him, Lily replied, although I thank you for that too. I would have taken you out to dance anyway. I only know one man who would help his daughter with a party the way you did. While I like Carrie's dad, he would have just hired someone. If I ever throw a backyard party, I'll hire you as cook and organizer. Thank you. I didn't do this just for Eva. This is also for my other daughters, you and Carrie. Besides, it wasn't that difficult. Why, not difficult. You prepared the pool, the yard, the food, were our photographer, bartender, security guard, and on top of that, you danced pretty well for a white guy. They both laughed. Pete says the girl who moved like a newborn giraffe during the day. How kind of my nose to catch your fall. She laughed loudly. Giraffe? Well, that's because you're not tall enough. If you were taller, I would have slammed into your chest instead of your face. Pete smiled at this humorous exchange. Giraffe, he repeated. She smiled at him. Yoda. Yoda. Small, but deadly. Now it was his turn to smile at this young girl, whom he truly loved like his own. I love you, Lily. She lit up with happiness, and I love you. To clear the air, he said, You know, I've never heard any of these songs before. That's understandable, but I have one especially for you. You just need to choose the tracks carefully. I don't want you to drink anything while dancing. Her smile always touched him to the depths of his soul. Soon the song she played especially for him began to play. Michael Franti and Spearhead Say Hey. I say hey, I'll be gone today. But I'll be back all around the way. It seems like everywhere I go. The more I see, the less I know. I say hey, I'll be gone today. But I'll be back all around the way. It seems like everywhere I go. The more I see, the less I know. But I know one thing. That I love you, baby girl. I love you, I love you, I love you. I love you, I love you, I love you. Lily told him, I love you, Dad. He hugged his girl, and I love you. And I also love dancing with you. Do you know why? No idea. I guess this confuses Eva. Nope. We both know that you just don't care what other people think. That's why it's so fun to be with you. It comes with age. Well, for an old man, you did a great job of protecting your girls today. She pressed herself closer to him, stopped her clubby movements, and began to slow dance while the other girls continued to dance nearby. She added, Seriously, everyone knows what a wonderful father you are. I especially know this. You have been like a father to me for so many years. We all admire you. After what happened this afternoon, if you weren't married, I give a 1000% guarantee that today you would definitely sleep with at least one of these sexy 19, 20-year-old girls, and most likely with 2 or 3. Could even drag someone in for a threesome if you wanted. And I say this knowing that the likelihood of you cheating on your wife is 0. Damn, you know how to stroke my ego. I think my own daughter is very beautiful, but to hear that from the most beautiful girl here is very nice. Thank you. I'm just jealous sometimes. Most kids our age are still so infantile. They are like 12-year-olds in adult bodies with too much testosterone. Nowadays, the image of an adult, accomplished man is very attractive. For example, in our circle, there are several good fathers and family men, but I don't know anyone who sincerely loves going to symphony concerts or the opera with his wife just like you. He replied, It's not that I directly adore music or the performances themselves. I like the whole atmosphere of the evening. I love planning such outings. I love the anticipation. I can buy Joan a special evening dress or lingerie so that we can remember this for many years to come. I love spending this time with Joan, her smiles, her touches. She either holds my arm or my hand all evening. It would be strange to do this for the sake of a regular trip to a restaurant or bar. I use these cultural events as an entourage to make the evening special. Understand? My mother would kill for an evening like this. And any of the girls here too. This proves what a rare specimen you are. Yeah, and Joan sometimes says that I'm a done and thick piece. She looked at him for a second, raising an eyebrow in confusion. Rare, thick, well done, how's the steak? Sorry, that's an old man joke. She laughed at this old man's joke and asked, Does Donnie have a chance of becoming like you? Maybe I should take a closer look at him. I think he'll be lucky if you take a closer look at him. And yes, he will be better than me in everything. He is still growing and gaining wisdom, but you could help him with this. You would be right for each other. Crap. Exactly, Pete smiled. Are you serious? She asked. Absolutely, he confirmed. Eva didn't tell me anything. She's probably uncomfortable thinking about her brother's personal life. Maybe I can fix it. I really hope so. She leaned over and kissed his cheek. Thank you for today. I love the way you always take care of us, like another father figure to Carrie and me. It makes me happy, Lily. Honestly, it's a pity that you and Carrie are not my own daughters, but I'm very glad that you are in Eva's life. You are like her own sisters. They were so engrossed in conversation that when Eve approached, they both jumped in surprise. Hey, you too. If he didn't love you like a daughter, I would already be jealous, looking at the way you look at each other, Eva joked. Lily snapped. Fuck you. You're just jealous that I can drag him to the pool house and have sex with him until he loses his mind without becoming incestuous. Ugh, shut up. He may be the cutest man here, but he's my dad. He's my dad too, Lily retorted. And it turns out I'm the only man here, handsome or not, Pete interjected. Both immediately said to him loudly, Shut up, and then they smiled. Eve asked Lily, Lily, do you mind if I dance with Daddy for a few minutes? Of course, she replied. Then she leaned toward Pete and whispered, I love you, Daddy. Then she hugged Eve and went to dance with the others. Eve asked, Dad, do you think any of what Ricky said about Mom could be true? He couldn't tell her what he really thought, and he thought that this fool knew too much. The only way Ricky could take those words was if his father himself knew something and shared it. Pete was seriously worried, but he didn't want Eve to worry about her mother's reputation. No, honey, I don't think so. Most likely, he picked up snippets of conversations somewhere and, when he himself was humiliated, tried to get out by spreading dirty rumors. If we were alone with him in a dark alley, I would probably beat him half to death for this, but I can't do it right here. I would be imprisoned. Eve seemed to consider his words and seemed to accept them. So you still enjoyed dancing with a bunch of sexy students, maybe to get ready for Mom's return? He himself didn't believe that he would be in the mood today, but he answered, Believe me, when you've been married for so many years, I don't allow myself to get turned on until I'm sure that your mother is in the same mood. Well, I hope she will eventually. I'm glad you're the kind of person who stays faithful. And judging by what I heard today, if someone had the opportunity to persuade you, they would not have stopped because of your wedding ring. We have enough guys who are still very far from being a real man. At your age, the main thing is patience. Not all men manage to mature by the age of 20. Some people do, but they are few. And I certainly wouldn't be a real man if I allowed myself, a married man, to be dragged into that pool house. By the way, Lily hinted that she would like to chat with your brother. They could make an interesting couple. It's funny, Eva replied. Before Donnie left for college, I had an idea that he looked at her with interest. But she is a year younger and studied 2 grades lower. I think he didn't want to get involved then because he was leaving. It's not easy. True, but if he gets a job at GM in Spring Hill after he graduates in December, things might work out for them. Dad, are you serious? Why not? She would be a great match for him, and he for her. Can you imagine anyone better? Eva thought for a minute. I think you're right. They would look really good together. Doesn't it bother you that they are from different races? You know my answer. She comes from a good family and is a wonderful girl. When I look at her, I don't see the color of her skin. I only see another daughter of mine. Eve hugged him when she heard this. Of course, we both understand that not everyone in Tennessee, white or black, approves of interracial marriage. But I believe that they would cope with such challenges with dignity. Just don't rush. You can send him that photo of the three of you in bikinis, you, Lily, and Carrie. Tell him he missed an awesome party. She shook her head. Dad, I'm afraid to imagine what he will do with that photo if I send it to him. Pete laughed. Well, since Lily is there, that's another reason to send. You're scaring me, Dad. I scare myself sometimes, baby. Himself. When he danced with a couple more of Eva's friends, they tried to show him the electric slide again, but he could not remember the movements, which only amused everyone, including himself. Around 10 in the evening, the girls had to go to Carrie, to her huge house, full of bedrooms. Each one came up to Pete to thank him, hugging him and kissing him before leaving. He had a little help with the cleaning, so all that remained was to collect the last bag of garbage and throw it into the container. It was at that moment that he heard the garage door open. Joan had returned. He came out to help her with her luggage, and she hugged him tightly, kissing him quickly on the lips. I missed you, honey. How was the party? It was interesting. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Everyone just left for Carrie. Oh, I thought they were going out to dance somewhere. In the end, we decided to dance here. I'm sure it was only to your advantage. So what? You sat with the lights off and peeked out of the window. This comment hurt him, but he replied, No. Lily pulled me outside, and I danced with almost everyone until they left. I can imagine how hot you are right now. If I weren't so exhausted from the flight and delays, I would serve you. In fact, Pete himself wasn't in much of a mood. He said, Let's take your bag into the house. I'll pour you some wine. There is something to talk about. She became curious and followed him into the living room. When he returned, she was already drinking wine and watched as he sat down opposite her, rather than next to her. Wow, it looks like this is really a serious matter, she grinned. Pete began to explain what happened, mentioning that he had to call the police, but left out the details of his conversation with Ricky. She was shocked to hear that someone could just walk into their yard and attack Sweet Carrie, and when Pete said the name of the attacker, she was even more taken aback. His name is Ricky Farmington, the same Ricky Andrew. Can't be. I don't believe he is capable of this. There's some kind of mistake here. Pete said, Apparently Andrew didn't have time to teach him something. And I thought to myself, for example, manners, respect, the ability to fight and shut your big mouth in time. Joan thought for a second, Wait, but Ricky is a big guy. Are you saying you threw it out of the yard like trash? She burst out laughing, then laughed louder, and soon she was laughing out loud. What? You made it up, right? She said. My husband. All your 75 kilograms against this tank. He looks almost twice your size. Okay, what's the joke? Pete didn't look as pleased. She saw his disappointed face and said, Oh, come on, Pete. I don't want to hurt your feelings, but let's be realistic. Pete stood up and said, Good night, Joan. Don't sulk, honey. I didn't mean anything bad. How else can he perceive this? I'll come as soon as I finish my glass. She was shocked when he replied, Don't bother. As Joan walked into the kitchen to put the glass in the sink, she called out to him, but he did not answer. When she went upstairs to their bedroom, he wasn't there. He was in the guest room. She asked, Pete, what are you doing here? I missed you and planned to snuggle up with my bear today. Bear. Now he wondered where the nickname came from. Is this an expression of endearment or humiliation? He might have flared up over the use of that nickname right now, but he was emotionally drained and wanted to think things over with a fresh mind in the morning. He said, Well, that means we'll both be disappointed. Then he closed the door and locked it. She knocked on the door for several minutes and begged him to open it, but eventually went into their bedroom, completely confused by this turn of events. My husband must be going crazy, she thought. She thought about writing to her daughter to find out more, but it was already late and she had to see her in the morning. Besides, there was no way her husband would do what he said he would do. This is simply impossible. The next morning, Pete knew she would be sleeping late after a long flight and a couple of days on the West Coast. The thought even occurred to him, did she really go on this trip? Which is why he began to doubt everything. He snuck into their bedroom and grabbed some clothes for a run. Later, I changed clothes and ate a light breakfast. When he heard that she was starting to wake up, he went for a long run. 7 miles in less than 53 minutes, and he was back. When he entered the house, Joan did not look too pleased. "Mister, we need to talk. It seems to me that you didn't tell me everything yesterday." He ignored her and went to the shower. She followed, but as soon as he was in the bathroom, he locked the door. She banged on the door, but he continued to shower and shave. Dressed and feeling refreshed, he prepared to talk to his wife. He walked downstairs, intending to go to his home office. She was already waiting for him there. "Andrew called me this morning. It seems I didn't hear the whole truth yesterday. Ricky had blood in his urine last night and was taken to the emergency room. It's hard to say who deserved it more," she said. "Ricky told Andrew that he was here just talking to Carrie, and suddenly you came up from behind and hit him on the back with something. They believe he has a kidney injury. Andrew wants to file a police report." Pete replied, "No wonder this idiot is lying about what happened. He's probably ashamed that your little bear made him out to be, as you put it, like trash. Andrew is very angry. Why did you do this? Why did you attack him?" "The reason I attacked this poor guy is because he attacked Carrie, the same Carrie whom we have loved like our own daughter for more than 10 years. The same Carrie we took with Ava and Lily to Spain for 2 weeks to celebrate their high school graduation. He dragged this same Carrie out of our yard by force, and I stopped it. Are you saying you believe their story and not your husband's? Do you think I hit him on the sly?" Joan said. "Sorry, Pete. No, I can't imagine you being able to do this face to face." Pete wanted to catch her right away. How does this boy know what he knows? But he was also angry that so far he had no evidence other than Rika's retold words. He couldn't openly make accusations that she could easily get around. And if these accusations are true, she will simply be more careful in the future. It was all disgusting. But if the accusations turn out to be true, then everything is over between them. "So you don't believe that I could do this face-to-face, one-on-one? No offense, honey. I love you like no one else, but he is huge, and although you are in excellent shape, you cannot compare with him. You remember Paris, right? You ran as fast as you could away from that short guy so you could reach the car before he caught up with you. That was after I dealt with his big friend. He wouldn't have caught me anyway, but I ran because—" Pete fell silent. It didn't make sense. It's already clear what she thinks about him. It was useless to tell her about past victories. He knew that all was already lost, perhaps in many ways. She continued, "Do you have any idea how difficult this will make my life?" Pete was surprised. "Oh, sorry. What should I have done? Would you rather I used a gun? I want to know what you hit him with." "With your hands," he answered. "Nonsense. I saw you working in our basement with a punching bag. Yes, you're pretty aggressive with her, but I don't see how you could hurt Ricky if you just punched him. How were you able to land an accurate hit unless you sneaked up behind him? Thank you for your trust, dear. It gives me confidence. In case you didn't notice, it was ironic." She dramatically rolled her eyes and groaned. "Come on. This doesn't help matters. What should I tell Andrew? Tell him that his son is a scumbag, and apparently he is the same. And that Ricky owes an apology to Carrie and to me. I won't. Ricky told him what happened, and he seemed to be acting normal." Pete shook his head. "You must be delusional if you believe him more than your husband. Did Andrew drug you during the trip? Joan's face flushed, and she was about to answer when they heard someone drive up and honk their horn. Glad that their conversation was interrupted, they both stood up to see who had arrived. It was a big Bentley from which Ava, Lily, Carrie, and her father, Brian, got out. All three girls ran up and hugged Pete, then Joan. A little later, Brian came up and shook Pete's hand. "Pete, I want to thank you for taking care of Carrie. It means a lot to me that you did this. She's everything to me. I will be forever grateful to you." Pete felt uncomfortable with the praise. "You know we love Carrie. I wasn't going to let that idiot take her away. This couldn't happen. You would do the same." Brian nodded and Joan chimed in. "Girls, can you explain to me what happened? I hear two different stories, from Ricky through Andrew and from Pete." Eva asked. "So you hear two options and still don't believe Dad?" Well, not quite like that. That's not what I meant. I'd just like to hear another version. Everything sounds, well, I don't know, implausible." Pete shook his head and went into the house. He didn't intend to linger. While the girls recounted the whole scene to Joan, Pete took the laptop and a bag of things. He needed to leave before he said everything he couldn't take back. He needed time to decide what to do next. When Pete returned to the street, Brian, Carrie, and Lily had already left, and Joan was in complete shock. How could her husband do such a thing? Seeing the expression on her face, he realized how low he had fallen in her eyes. And he also noticed that she was more concerned about how everything would affect her work, and not on him, on her daughter, or on Carrie. That said a lot. Pete asked, "So, what are we going to do with this idiot? Someone needs to teach him a lesson." Joan snorted. "And you think it will be you?" Pete couldn't believe his ears. She just heard three people corroborate his story, and she still doesn't believe he can handle that guy. Apparently, she considers her husband to be some kind of weakling. He's probably very angry. Pete grinned, imagining that Ricky was most likely still peeing blood. But what she said next killed him. "I don't think you'll be so lucky next time." Pete's look said she had gone too far. She really thought so, and was just trying to protect her husband from getting hurt. How could he compete with such a big, young, and strong guy? She could only watch as Peter's face changed from complete shock to rage. "When did you stop respecting me as a man, Joan?" "What? You haven't behaved like this before. You trusted me. Looks like this is over now. You're talking nonsense. My feelings for you have not changed. I am proud of you and everything we have achieved together." "Well, I'm sorry, but I don't believe it. Did you know that I have C-level people in my contact list from several Fortune 500 companies? These people call me and my company when they need help. This is how I earn our living. My company may not make as much as Andrew's, but my employees and I are highly respected in our industry. And much more than I, it turns out, get at home. These last 2 days have become very revealing for me in the way you look at me." "What does it mean?" "You don't have to worry about anything. I made a decision. If this idiot, or rather, both he and his father aren't here tomorrow at 6 p.m. to apologize to Carrie and me, then Brian and I will go to the police and file a report. He still has to pay damages for the hood of her SUV. "Are you serious? But I still have to work with Andrew." "Well, maybe you can convince him that he should raise his son to respect others. Although it seems that the son takes his father's example. But you should have realized that yourself, considering how much time you spend next to him." "Pete, this could hurt my work." "Joan, look what's happening to us, but you don't seem to care. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., or Brian and I go to the police. I'm going away for a while." "No, you're not leaving. We haven't finished talking. We're done, and I need to be away. From you. I'm going to Brian to discuss all this with him. I'm not going to call that idiot father. He only listens to you, so tell him what his son must do to avoid going to jail. Time has passed." "Pete, come back." He didn't answer, walked into the garage, threw his bag into the car, and drove away, leaving Joan standing with her hands on her hips and an annoyed grimace. Pete had never done anything like this before. On the way to Brian's, Pete decided that he needed to travel a little for work. He suspected that, judging by his wife's reaction and what Ricky and Andrew had said, she had already succumbed to Andrew's influence. This thought was infuriating. Damn Joan. Brian and Pete talked and agreed that at 6 o'clock tomorrow they would decide everything. If not, then the police. Pete rented a room at a local hotel and sat down at his desk to work, with the Braves game on in the background. Around 5 in the evening, his phone rang. He blocked Joan's phone and his home phone so that no one would disturb him. He wondered who was calling. It turned out to be Eva. "Hello, baby." "Hello, Daddy," she said. "I'm returning to our apartment. Are you around?" At Vanderbilt University, Eve shared an apartment with Carrie and Lily on campus. In general, all undergraduate students are required to live on campus. The fact that the three of them got one of these luxury apartments is the result of some rather complicated placement procedure. Most likely, Brian simply asked how much he needed to donate to the university to make this possible, and it all worked out. Brian and his wife had a lot of money, some old family money, and he himself was successful as an entertainment lawyer in Nashville. His family lived up to the Williamson family name. They donated a lot to the Williamson County Medical Center, located in the county seat, the city of Franklin. Pete replied to his daughter, "I'm nearby. I'm at the residence in near the shopping center. Room 413. I'll be there in a few minutes." 10 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. When he opened it, Eva hugged him tightly. "I don't understand, Dad. Why doesn't Mom believe us? Guess she doesn't have much faith in my ability to protect my family." Eva said, "She must believe. I told her everything about Paris." Pete shrugged. Guess what? She didn't believe it. Eve shook her head, and he saw a tear slip from her eye. He said, "Sorry, baby. Maybe it was all Big Andrew who convinced her that I wasn't up to him. I don't know. You don't think what that idiot said is true?" The second time he wanted to say that, most likely, her mother was cheating on him with Andrew, which is why she lost respect for her husband. He wanted to call her mother a woman of easy virtue, but he could not say that to his daughter. Therefore he said, "No, he's just talking nonsense." Pete hated lying to his daughter, but he didn't want her to suspect that about her mother. It might be true, but he had no proof yet. "Don't worry, baby. Everything will be fine. You'll see," she asked. "I'd like to believe, but I'm worried." "No need. Everything will work out." She wondered if he meant them with her or the whole family. A few minutes later, she left. The school year was starting in a couple of weeks, but for now, she only had a few working days left in her summer internship at the University Medical Center. The next day, he opened the home alarm app on his phone to see when the garage door opened and closed, indicating that Joan had left for work. The upside is that he had his own consulting firm, and when he wasn't traveling, he could work from his home office. The downside is that if you and your wife have a quarrel, you won't be able to run away to work. Finally, at lunchtime, he checked his messages. There were 20 messages from my wife, some quite long. Basically, she wrote that he was being unreasonable. The last message read, "You win. He'll be here at 6. I left you a voicemail." When he listened to the voicemail, he missed everything except the last one, which sounded like this. "Pete, Andrew said Ricky would be arriving a couple of minutes before 6 tonight to apologize. I'm still upset with you for putting me in this situation. We'll discuss all this when everyone leaves." Pete rolled his eyes. Again, it's all his fault. He was scheduled to travel to Louisville, Kentucky, to conduct an all-day strategy session on Thursday and Friday morning for one of his clients. He decided to leave there today, immediately after the apology, in order to arrive a couple of days earlier. He will pay himself for the extra night at the hotel and will be able to work with the client on Wednesday, preparing on the spot. Brian and Carrie arrived at 5:45 p.m. She hugged Pete tightly, and Brian shook his hand and said, "Well, now this should be interesting. How are you and Joan? I heard that all this is causing problems for you." "Nothing serious. She's just trying to understand how her little husband was able to beat up huge Ricky," Brian said. I admit I'm a little surprised. Not so much by what you could do, but by how confidently you did it, although it's probably not worth it. You always seemed very prepared for everything you do. Thank you, Brian. I hope Joan remembers this too. If you don't mind, I'll wait here for him because I don't want that idiot coming into my house. I wouldn't want to either. A couple of minutes before 6, a red BMW pulled into their driveway. Joan was still nowhere to be seen. Ricky got out of the car. There was no joy on his face. He approached them and said, "Carrie, sorry about Saturday. I went too far. I missed you and wanted to date you again, but your refusal hurt me. I understand that we will never meet again, but I hope that our friendship is not destroyed. Sorry." Judging by his tone, he seemed more or less sincere, but Pete thought that he was just looking for a way to get her into bed again someday. Carrie said, "I don't know if I'll ever be able to be friends with you again, Ricky, but I'll at least try to be polite. That's the best I can promise right now. Understand." Ricky turned to Brian. "Mr. Williamson, I'm sorry for what you did to Carrie and her car. Send us an invoice and we will pay." The words sorry seemed to come out, but he didn't show much remorse. Brian simply nodded. When Ricky looked at Pete, there was no longer any remorse on his face. "Mr. Clark, I apologize for barging into your party and your territory. I shouldn't have done that." "Okay, Ricky, thank you. I think we're done." Before turning to the car, he grinned for everyone to see. When he reached the door of his BMW, he glanced at Pete and silently said, "Weak." Pete opened his palm and showed him with a prove-it gesture, like, "If I see, I believe." Ricky grinned and got into the car. Brian said, "Well, his apology to Carrie sounded more or less sincere, but to us not so much. What was the last thing he said to you?" Pete shook his head. "Nothing special. We were talking when he ran away. Apparently, he's trying to hurt me again." Carrie wanted to say something, but she was terribly ashamed that she had ever agreed to go on a date with Ricky. "This is truly a wrong decision," Brian said. "If you need help with it, let me know. One call and I will raise a whole team of lawyers against him and his father. And I can find a couple of acquaintances in the police so that they can look after him on weekends. It would be interesting." He smiled at this thought. "Thank you, Brian. Let's do without this for now. I already have enough problems that need to be solved first." Brian nodded. After they took Ava home yesterday, Carrie told her parents about all the nasty things Ricky had said about Joan. They had known Joan for many years. None of them believed that Ricky was telling the truth. At least they hoped that wasn't the case. Brian and Pete shook hands. Carrie hugged Pete goodbye, and they drove away. Pete opened the garage and left as soon as they left. As he pulled out of his driveway, he noticed Joan's car approaching. Pete didn't even wave at her, but simply drove his car north toward Louisville. He was going to use this time to decide what to do and how to get some evidence one way or another. What he wanted most now was just to leave. He was still angry at his wife for her disrespectful behavior, and after Ricky's accusations, Pete knew that he would not be able to restrain himself and would probably say something he would regret. Therefore, a few days away from home should have helped him calm down and prepare for further actions. 10 minutes later, his phone rang. He considered not answering, but decided he didn't have much to lose other than annoyance. Maybe he could calm her down a little so that she would leave him alone while he was away. "Hello, Joan." "Pete, I hope you just got ready to go to the store and will come back right away." "No. My client asked me to come to Louisville a couple days early. I'll be there before we have lunch on Friday, so I'll be back home around dinner time." And he decided to add a snide twist. "Well, unless, of course, you leave with Andrew this weekend." She was surprised by his comment. "What?" "No. You know, I usually go away every 6 to 8 weeks. Where did you get this from?" "Yes, nothing. If you were at home on Saturday, you would have seen everything for yourself. I'm still angry that you sided with Ricky. I know, and I'm sorry. Andrew is also unhappy, but this is all understandable. Ricky came and apologized." Pete replied. "He apologized to Carrie, and it seems quite sincere, but I think this is only because he still has not lost hope of someday sleeping with her. And in front of me and Brian, he just muttered the most lame apology I've ever heard. You and Andrew should still be glad that he's not in jail. He's still a kid, Pete. He's 20 years old, a young man who needs to learn to control his anger and respect other people. Joan sighed loudly. I wanted to talk to you about this tonight. Can we discuss everything when you come back on Friday? Certainly. I'll miss you, Pete. Pete thought she wouldn't. Have a nice week, Joan, he said and hung up. Joan was surprised by this ending to their conversation. Her dear husband was clearly upset by all this, although she still felt that he didn't really understand how this situation affected her work. She was sure that this was all just a temporary difficulty in their long journey together. On Friday, she was going to cook him something delicious and have a nice night in the bedroom, and then everything will calm down by itself. Louisville was a little over 3 hours away, plenty of time to think things through. Pete was pretty sure that Brat Ricky knew too much for it to be just talk. And if Andrew is the type of man who sleeps with married women, then it's no wonder he's just as bad a father as he is for sharing such details with his son. Pete's biggest worry was that Joan and Andrew were sleeping with each other while on business trips. However, as Ricky said, they could have sex in the city. Andrew is divorced, so they wouldn't even need hotels. Damn it. Pete also suspected that Ricky might try to find evidence so that he could poke Pete's nose into the facts. Of course, he could have fabricated something, but Pete decided to be on his guard. So Pete planned to travel as much as possible over the next few weeks. If she's really cheating on him, then when he's away, they might let their guard down and do it at their house. Andrew was quite the impudent person to do such a thing, and Joan, apparently, was too dependent on him to refuse him. Or maybe it's worth hiring a private investigator to keep an eye on her. Sighing heavily, Pete thought he couldn't believe it had come to this, but Joan's behavior, her obvious disrespect for him, unsettled him. How many years did he wear rose-colored glasses because of his love for her? Once he got to the hotel, Pete went to Amazon, created a new account, and ordered several hidden Wi-Fi cameras to install in his home. Delivery was scheduled for Thursday directly to the hotel. He hoped that they would never record anything untoward, but he did not have much faith in this outcome. The week has been difficult for everyone. Eva called her dad a couple of times, and he answered that he was fine. Donnie called once to see how he was doing, and Pete said the same thing. Everything was fine. Joan left him messages via text and voicemail, declaring her love and telling him she missed him. She did this just when Pete was busy with clients, and he was glad because he didn't want to talk to her. On Friday, he drove 3.5 hours back home, fearing what awaited him there, but everything turned out better than he thought. When he arrived, Joan was beautifully dressed in an elegant dress just above the knees and high heels with delicate jewelry. Pete realized that she most likely wanted to go to a restaurant. In heels, she was the same height as him, and this never bothered him. He was always proud when she walked next to him, arm in arm. That evening, it was fine for him to go out to a restaurant. It was supposed to keep her in a good mood and probably keep their conversations from serious topics until they returned home. He quickly changed his clothes, and she asked him to take them to an expensive steakhouse that she knew he loved. As on those evenings when they went to the theater or concerts, she did not leave him a single step, wrapping her arm around his arm. Under the table, she pulled off one of her shoes and ran her foot up his leg. Pete hated that even though he was annoyed with her, he still reacted so strongly to her touch. He wondered, how many more nights like this do we have ahead of us? In the depths of his soul, hoping that he was wrong, but fearing that his guess would be correct. As soon as they entered the house, Joan immediately attacked him. They did not have time to get further than the living room before she had already taken off her dress and thong panties and began to unzip his fly. She looked so sexy in just her stockings and high heels that Pete immediately became aroused. Pete passionately hugged Joan to him, spun her around, and then leaned her against the back of the sofa, not allowing her to come to her senses. Their intimacy was stormy, greedy, as if they were trying to make up for everything they had missed. When they went upstairs, Joan pulled him into the bedroom with a slight smile, and Pete, watching her, felt desire flare up with renewed vigor. There, in their secluded corner, she gave him all her tenderness, and then, driven by her own pleasure, she took the situation into her own hands, pushing them both to the limit. Then she collapsed on him with a feeling of deep satisfaction and whispered, It was wonderful. I needed it. I love you, Pete." He hugged his wife and replied, "I loved you too, Joan." She didn't catch the past tense in his words. After lying there for a few more minutes, Joan went to the bathroom to get ready for bed. Returning, she lay down next to him, pressed her back to her husband, put his hand on her waist, and fell asleep blissfully, being sure that everything was in perfect order. The next morning, Joan was awake when Pete opened his eyes. She ran her finger in circles on his chest. After making sure he was awake, she said, "Thank you for last night. Everything was great." Pete couldn't help but admit that it really wasn't bad. "It was my pleasure, honey." The word sweetheart reminded him of what Ricky had said. Joan continued, "I need to tell you something, but I hope you won't be too upset. I have to go to Memphis on Thursday to meet with one of our university clients. They want a complete overview of the portfolio. I'll be back on Friday." "Is that so? Aren't such visits planned in advance?" "Usually, yes, but here a competitor is trying to lure them away, and this is one of my key clients, so Andrew wants me to go and set their minds right." "It's clear. So this time you're alone?" "Yes. We have been working with them for many years, so no problems are expected." Pete thought for a moment. She asked, "Everything is fine?" "Yes. By the way, I also have a similar situation. I myself will have to leave next week and stay there the rest of the week. General Dynamics Vice President of Purchasing for Gulfstream wants me to go with him to an IT conference on supply chain management in Orlando. Then I'll be with them at the Savannah plant for the rest of the week." Hearing this, she sat up and her blanket slid off, revealing her breasts, which were shaking slightly. It looked amazing. Pete was no longer interested in anything other than pressing his lips to her breasts. He adored her figure. Joan always had round shapes, full breasts, and an appetizing butt. Joan wanted to ask in more detail about his unusual business trip, but his tongue and lips were busy with her breasts at that time, and she decided that she could find out the details a little later. Then they had slow, languid morning sex, and then took a shower together. This had rarely happened to them in recent years, and they both absolutely loved it. She regretted that this did not happen more often, but she understood that she was partly to blame for this. Pete was painfully aware that this all seemed to be heading towards a painful conclusion. At breakfast, Joan finally decided to talk about the matter at hand. "Pete, we didn't discuss last weekend. Are we okay? I want you to know how much I love you. We have to find a way to put this behind us because I have long-term plans for you and for us." He smiled at her and squeezed her hand. "I hope so too, Joan," although in his heart he no longer believed in it. To her credit, throughout the weekend and into the beginning of next week, Joan tried to surround him with love, and not just sexual love, as never before in many years. He reciprocated her feelings as best he could, but his heart told him that the end was near. Over the weekend, Pete installed a small GPS tracker on her car to track her routes. He carefully placed all the Amazon packages he secretly hid in his trunk at home. He replaced smoke alarms, a few books on the shelves, and even a few wall sockets with devices with hidden Wi-Fi cameras and microphones. I installed a couple of street cameras for my security system. Now his home was completely under video and audio surveillance, and instead of feeling protected, Pete experienced deep bitterness. On Thursday morning, Joan kissed him goodbye. He asked, "Will you drive your own car to Memphis or rent it?" "I'll go on mine. Don't worry, the company will compensate for the mileage, and it's safer for me to drive my own car." "Okay, be careful." "I will, honey. Love you." "And I love you." Not even a few hours passed before the worst fears were confirmed. When she was supposed to be either at their office in Brentwood or already driving along I-40 towards Memphis, the GPS showed her car parked at Andrew's house. The marriage was officially destroyed. Crap. Pete urgently needed to throw out his anger, and he went to his dojo to spar with anyone who would be there and to train. He wanted to stay in shape, because if the opportunity presented itself, he would not miss the opportunity to repay Andrew physically. That's a thank you, Joan. Later, Joan sent him a kind message saying she had arrived safely in Memphis, and the tracker still showed her near Andrew's house. Pete prepared the appearance of his trip to Orlando and decided that on Friday he would call to hire a private investigator and establish surveillance on his wife. But this turned out not to be necessary. Early on Friday morning, an email arrived at Pete's work email with the subject line, "For Pudsey Bear." The letter said, "I found your email on your website. I've been egging my father on for a long time, and he said that soon I too will have sex with her." It also contained a link to a cloud drive, which contained many hours of video from several cameras installed in Andrew's house. It looks like the system was installed recently and the recordings were in real time. Pete opened the first entry and saw Joan and Andrew entering the house. Andrew began to undress her right in the living room, and just like Pete the previous Friday, he began to have sex with her. Pete saw, and that was enough. He drove to the airport, parked his car long-term, and called his wife. She, as he expected, did not answer the phone, and he left a voice message. "I'm at the airport, flying away. I'll text you when I'm there." The sounds of the airport around him were meant to create the illusion that he was actually about to board the plane. But he didn't fly anywhere. He simply went to the Marriott Hotel at the airport to calmly study the evidence of his wife's infidelity. Damn brat Ricky. In fact, Pete didn't need or want to watch the sex itself. The scene on the couch alone was already burning his soul. And the fact that her car was spending the night at Andrew's was more than enough. But he was interested in hearing what they had to say. This turned out to be torment for his soul. Even despite the video itself, he had to listen to these moans, slaps, slurping. But in the end, he heard several important pieces. Firstly, "Damn, Andrew, not so rude. I love good sex, but you don't have to be so downright rough with me. I understand that you are angry, but there is no need to try to beat me off again. I know. Why should I return what is already mine? I'm still angry that Ricky had to apologize. You need to get better at keeping your little hubby under control. I abstained with him as you asked." She lied. He barked. "Did you ask? I'm not asking you for anything. You do what I say if you want to continue to enjoy all my benefits." Joan began to get tired of his possessive tone. She already felt that Andrew's sell-by date would soon expire if she wanted to save the marriage. "I know. I like being with you, but I love Pete. He is a wonderful father and husband, and I am not going to give up on him. He and I will still ride off into the sunset together. If you love him so much, why are you having sex with me?" She smiled. "You already know why. Because you like strong men. It's okay, baby. I understand that you wanted this feeling nearby. I'll take care of you." "No, it's not just that. He himself is a wonderful person, caring and attentive. It's just, I don't know, sometimes I like to be with someone who makes me feel fragile, even if I'm wearing heels. I like wearing his t-shirt, which is too big for me. I like it when my hand rests on your shoulder and I feel strength, not just shape. When we walk down the street, I feel calm because I know that there is a person next to me who will protect me. Working with you all these years, I realize that sometimes I missed this feeling. Don't worry, my dear. You continue to take care of me, and I will continue to take care of you. Although, if you can't keep him in line, I'll have to talk to him. I'm still angry at him for sneakily hitting Ricky. Don't you dare. If you even lay a finger on him, you will regret it. You will not hurt him, understand?" This surprised both Andrew and Pete. Andrew replied, Okay. If he is so dear to you, I will not touch this little one, but don't forget who you belong to." Joan was infuriated by the words that she belonged to someone. If it belonged only to her husband. And by the way, calm him down. I don't want him to sneak up behind me and hit me. This will end badly for him. I told you, the girls told me he didn't do that. I don't know how, but they say that he beat Ricky fairly. Andrew laughed. They probably just conspired. There is no chance this little puss can beat Ricky. None. He's not a pussy, and if he is, then he's my pussy burr. So don't bother me, I'll figure it out myself. Andrew laughed again. Okay, as long as you put yourself in my hands, I can live with it. Joan wondered what he meant by yet. She received an answer quickly. The second interesting exchange occurred after Pete left her a voicemail from the airport. Based on Andrew's tone, Pete knew roughly what to expect. Joan said, "Well, he left for a week." Andrew smiled with satisfaction. "Wonderful. This means you can relax for a couple more days and have sex." Joan responded, "Yes, but if you keep having sex with me like this, I'll get bruises." "How will I explain this to him? And you shouldn't have sex with him too often, if at all, so he won't see it. But he still comes into the bathroom when I'm getting dressed. You said to yourself that you like it when I tease him." Andrew grinned. "Well, if we're going to have sex all this time, you better keep him away from you for a couple of days, otherwise he'll feel how stretched you are. A cold bath and a day usually help me get back into shape. And besides, he is not that much smaller than you." Andrew didn't want to hear it. Taking the initiative, he said, "Let's do this. I'll be gentler with you as you want, but not here. Here, in my home, or on trips, I will have sex with you as I like. And if we come to your home, then I will be soft and affectionate, like your dear hubby. You said he wouldn't be back until Friday night, right?" Joan was worried because they had never had sex in her house before. "I'm not sure this is a good idea. Remember what I said yesterday? You do what I say, and everything will be fine. If it scares you that much, I won't stay the night. We'll just have long lunches at your place. It'll look innocent." Joan thought about it for a minute, but since Pete was in Orlando and then in Savannah, it didn't seem to be a big deal. She will call Pete in the morning and evening for appearances, that's all. Okay, just long lunches. The thought flashed through her head again that she needed to end things with Andrew as soon as possible. But how? The evil grin returned to Andrew's face. He thought that, once in the house, it would not be difficult for him to gain a foothold there. He wasn't particularly afraid that Pete would return early. He has already dealt with offended husbands, and he will deal with such a petty one as Pete. Pete copied all the records from the cloud. When he and Joan leave Andrew's house, he will delete everything from the server. So, unless Ricky kept the files for himself, Pete will have the only copy. Pete had a few calls to make while it was still Friday and everyone was at work. The first thing he did was call Brian. "Hello, Brian. This is Pete. Do you have a minute?" "Of course, my friend, there is. What's happened? Do you remember we were talking at my house when Ricky came to apologize?" "Yes, I remember. It seems that his boast is true. Joan cheated on me. I don't know how long ago, but apparently a long time ago. Oh man, I'm so sorry. I understand that you are calling for a reason. Alas, I need help. You need a good divorce lawyer, and fast. Consider it done. I know a lady. It can be tough and merciless, or, conversely, it can just quickly arrange everything whatever is more convenient for you. Let me send her your contacts, and she will find time for you today." "Great. Also, please tell Miriam not to tell anyone. I know you don't keep secrets from each other, but I need things to remain quiet until I give Joan the documents. Most likely next week. Okay, Pete? I'm sorry for both of you. We have always loved both you and Joan. Thank you, Brian. I'm sorry too. I owe you. Stop it. We have been friends for many years, and our daughters have also been friends for a long time. It's just helping a friend. And when it's all over, you can get me a couple of glasses of beer. I won't mind. Consider it an agreement." Brian put him in touch with a divorce lawyer named Charlotte Steele. She began filing divorce papers. That same evening, Pete saw that Joan's car was back at their house. Before going to bed, he received a call from her. "Hello, Pete. How's Orlando? It's hot and humid, and they say there's a chance of rain." Everything is as usual at the end of August. How's Memphis? Or rather, Nashville. I returned this afternoon. It's boring here without you. I wish I could repeat Friday night like last time. Yes, I would like it too, said Pete, although he understood that now everything could not be returned. He would give a lot to go back a month and believe that his wife was faithful to him. They talked a little more, and she admitted that she missed and loved him. Love you, Pete. And I you, Joan. After finishing the conversation, Pete felt terribly lonely, but the more he thought about it, the angrier he became. The next day, Saturday, he went to the airport again and rented a car there. He needed to find a dojo where he could work out without running the risk of running into someone he knew who would tell his wife or daughter that it turned out he hadn't flown anywhere. After making a few calls, he found a gym near the Opry away from his wife's home and office and agreed to train there. He spent all Saturday and Sunday sparring and training in the gym. It was a great workout, and Pete felt he was in good shape. All this time he corresponded with Joan. The cameras showed that she spent Saturday alone at home, and on Sunday Eva came to her. It broke his heart. He understood that the family was collapsing. He didn't think that the children would turn their backs on him, but the upcoming divorce meant that the old family would no longer exist. For several minutes he indulged in grief, and then it gave way to determination. Well, we'll work with what we have, he thought. On Monday morning, Pete received a call from Brian. Pete, I wanted to tell you. Joan called Miriam yesterday. She asked us to help send her resume to our investment advisors because, she said, it was time for her to make a change. Miriam said she would take care of it. What do you think? Should I do this or not? I understand that this does not negate the fact of her betrayal, but what if she really wants to leave him? Pete thought about it. He thought about his family, about what awaited him, and how life would most likely unfold. Although he no longer saw her as his wife, Joan leaving Andrew could reduce problems with children in the future. Yes, get busy. The damage cannot be undone, but maybe it will be easier for everyone. I got you. By Monday afternoon, Charla had finished drawing up the divorce papers, and Pete wondered whether Joan and Andrew would have an intimate meeting at his home anytime soon. That same evening, Joan called him and told him that she missed him and loved him. He tried to sound kind in response. Donnie called him too, and they had a good conversation. He suspected that Eve knew something about what was happening, despite his assurances. But Donnie, if Eve told him, and most likely she did, he would be taken by surprise by all of this. Damn you, Joan, he thought. Pete didn't sleep well that night. On Tuesday morning, Pete was working from the hotel, and around lunchtime he received a notification that Joan's car had left her office and was heading to their house. They could go together, but it would seem risky, so he assumed they would go in separate cars. His home security system sent an alert that 2 cars had pulled into his driveway. He prepared to go to the house himself. He was in no hurry. I assumed it would take them several hours. At about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Joan said, "We need to go back. People will start looking for us." Andrew replied, "Don't worry. I own the company. Nobody will question me. True, they won't question you, but they might suspect something about me. I don't want anyone to tell my husband." Why? You don't think he'll divorce you, right? This was another demonstration that Andrew didn't really have any feelings for her other than sexual interest. I do not know. I know that he will not want to do this. Maybe he would have accepted one mistake, but if he had known how long it lasted, I don't think he would have forgiven me. Andrew said, "You managed to keep him in the dark for 3 years. You will cope further. Yes, perhaps, if we see each other only once a month, as before. The last couple of weeks have been too dangerous. I want no one but us to know, so I at least need to get back to the office." Andrew smiled, remembering that Ricky was also in the know and might soon join them. Joan was a good employee, but no one is irreplaceable. Her future in the company could depend on how she behaves next. She couldn't make a fuss in the office because it would eventually get to her husband. The same went for Andrew's possible allegations of sexual harassment. Even if she made up her mind, accusations are one thing, but it is extremely difficult to prove that after such a long period of the affair it was harassment. Andrew believed that he had all the power and control over the situation. Pete had been standing a few houses away from his own, out of sight, for about an hour, listening to their sex and conversation using Wi-Fi cameras that stream all the movement and sound to the cloud. Hearing the phrase about 3 years ago, he felt like a complete fool. But instead of falling into despair, he used it as fuel for rage. He checked the home's security system through an app on his phone to make sure the alarm was turned off, and there would be no sound alerts when he entered the back door. He quietly crept inside and quietly walked up the stairs. When he reached the landing, he heard Joan imploring, "Come on, Andrew. I need to get back to the office." Pete walked into their bedroom and said, "That means it's time for you to get the hell out, asshole." Joan was stunned to see her husband. She grabbed a sheet to cover herself and exclaimed, "Pete, I thought you were in Savannah. It's not what you think." Pete, leaning on the door frame, replied, "Okay, Joan, you're usually a pretty smart woman, but this is probably the dumbest thing that's ever come out of your mouth. Well, with the possible exception of that idiot." He saw his wife's face and neck turn red with shame. "Okay," he thought, "so she still has a conscience." Andrew said, "Wow, look, little pussy bear decided to watch a real man fuck your wife. Don't worry, she says she only loves you, but we both know she loves my plus size the most." "Shut up, Andrew." "That's not true, Pete." Joan sobbed, "I love only you." Pete replied, "Apparently not enough to not sleep with that fat bastard." And Andrew added, "I remember recently your little son was lying on the ground, trying to get up, when I finished him off with my bare hands. Maybe you should go and give him another lesson for having sex with that prostitute, or will you try to deal with me yourself?" Joan was hurt by this nickname, a woman of easy virtue. Pete had never called her that before. The second remark clearly caught Andrew's attention. "I will kill you in your own house, in front of your bitch wife." She wanted a bigger and stronger man than you, and she got it. "Yes, yes. Put on your shorts or trousers and go out into the yard. I don't want you to be naked when I call an ambulance to pick you up." When Andrew stood up to lift his trousers, Pete laughed loudly, pointing out his size. "Joan, you traded me for this. God. You could have simply said that you wanted a taller man, but you definitely didn't go for the large size." In fact, Andrew was a little bigger, as Joan had described, but any man would get angry when people made fun of his size, and that was exactly what Pete needed to drive Andrew into a rage. Pete left the room without waiting for either of them. Joan was crying even harder now, but when Andrew moved to follow Pete, she jumped up too. She needed to stop this. She didn't want her husband to get hurt. She rushed towards Andrew, but only managed to scratch her shoulders and upper back with her nails. Andrew, surprised by her jerk, reflexively turned around and hit her with the back of his hand. The blow was so strong that it threw her head onto the headboard. Joan was in pain and almost passed out. Pete was already running downstairs, and fortunately for Andrew, he did not hear him hit Joan. Pete didn't want his house to be trashed in the upcoming fight because he didn't want to end things quickly, and he didn't want to leave his own home. He put on a mouth guard in case he got hit in the face in a fight. Then he ran into the backyard as if he was being chased, specifically in view of the new security camera aimed at the backyard. Andrew ran after. "I'll enjoy fucking you, Pete. And then when I'm done, I'll bring Joan here and have sex with her on a chair by the pool for you to watch." With a mouth guard in his mouth, Pete said, "I don't care if you have sex with her. She doesn't mean anything to me anymore. I'm here for a lesson, so that you can remember that sleeping with married women is dangerous. I hope the lesson is painful." In the backyard, Andrew grinned and walked towards Pete, hoping to just grab him and punch him. He thought his height advantage would help him in a fight. As expected, Andrew had a little more experience than Ricky. He kept his hands at head level, like in classic boxing. Shirtless, it was clear that Andrew had huge arms and shoulders to match his massive body. Obviously, he has been to the gym more than once. but the fat around his waist hinted that he was focusing more on heavy weights rather than cardio, unless sex with Joan could be considered cardio. This gave Pete an advantage in endurance, but also meant that Andrew's torso could be vulnerable. As long as Pete avoids heavy blows, he should succeed. For the security camera, Pete tried to look like he didn't want to fight. When he hits Andrew, it's important for him to make it look like self-defense. He figured that no one would see the video at all, unless Andrew tried to turn everything around or sue. Andrew went on the attack, throwing several jabs, trying to grab Pete. He easily took a step back, dodging. Andrew paused a little, and Pete still held his hands up in a protective position. So Andrew looked like the aggressor, and Pete seemed only defensive. Pete was just waiting for the right moment. Andrew rushed forward again, swinging his fists, and Pete moved out of the path of the blows or parried them with his forearms. From the camera's perspective, it still looked like Pete was simply trying to avoid a much larger opponent. If Pete continued to move like this, he would have an unlimited supply of strength, and Andrew was already breathing heavily. After a couple of minutes of this dance, Andrew threw a predictable straight to the right. It was similar to the one Ricky had dealt, only from a stronger opponent. As in the fight with Ricky, Pete delivered a powerful blow to Andrew's right kidney. Andrew doubled over in pain, but did not fall. However, Pete was not bothered by this. While Andrew could not recover, Pete jumped up and, as he lowered himself, hit the same area of the kidney hard with his elbow with a dull grunt. Pete hoped that his blow to the 12th rib would be painful enough. This time Andrew did fall to all fours. A hellish pain in his side prevented him from getting up. How did this little guy hit so hard? Was spinning in his head. Pete stood and waited for Andrew to get up. For the purposes of the video, it was important to him that Andrew continued to look like he was on the attacking side, although that wasn't so easy right now. Finally, Andrew somehow got up and put his hands out again, but Pete could see that he was moving poorly. Now Pete was enjoying fending off Andrew's blows. The blows from the damaged rib were not so strong, they seemed more ostentatious. Pete understood that every blow was felt by Andrew with wild pain, especially for a person who was not accustomed to fights and did not know how to endure severe pain. Knowing he wasn't winning, Andrew hoped to get close to Pete, grab him, and throw him to the ground, because that was the only way he could gain the upper hand. However, his side was burning, and it was becoming difficult to breathe. Meanwhile, having come to her senses in the bedroom, Joan put on her robe and ran downstairs. On the way, she grabbed the phone and, reaching the stairs, dialed 911, saying that her husband and her boss were fighting in the yard and they needed an ambulance. Having reached her husband's office, she stopped abruptly, then quickly ran inside. On Andrew's next attempt to rush at Pete, it turned out clumsily and waddled. The pain greatly hindered him. Pete caught him, and when he fell back to his hands and knees, Pete kicked him in the groin as if he were kicking a football. Andrew screamed and curled up, pressing his hands to his balls. It's too late, a serious blow has already reached its target. Andrew could not get up without help and was unlikely to be able to lift anything else soon. It's a pity. Who's the puska burr now, moron? Pete said to the groaning Andrew. I'm a damn grizzly bear for you. Consider yourself off easy. If I wanted to, I would drown you in the pool. Pete sat on the ground 10 feet from Andrew and listened to his moans and screams. Normally, Pete would feel sorry for a man in such a state, but for this guy, he felt nothing but satisfaction that something like justice had been done. He waited for the police or ambulance to arrive, believing that Joan had already called them. He wondered why she never showed up. Where is she? Then something happened that Pete had never expected. Joan rushed out of the house with a gun in her hands, and with a black eye already beginning to darken. She walked towards Andrew, pointing the gun at him, and Pete immediately jumped up to calm his wife. She screamed, "You won't harm my husband. I will kill you, do you hear? Don't you dare touch my husband." In fact, Andrew no longer posed any threat. Pete hugged her, pointing the gun towards the ground, and gently pulled the weapon out of her hands, putting it aside. A few minutes later, when the police arrived, she kept repeating, You won't harm my husband. You won't harm my husband. It seemed like she was completely on the verge of a breakdown. The policeman removed the cartridges from the gun and checked the condition of the victim. He radioed the dispatcher about Andrew's condition and heard that an ambulance was on the way. By this time, Andrew was bleeding from the mouth, which surprised the officer because the visible damage was mostly on his sides, visibly red and rapidly turning blue spots and deep scratches on his upper back. Looking at Joan's beginning bruise under her eye, he first turned to her. "Ma'am, are you okay?" This brought her to her senses, and she said, he, and, sobbing, pointed at Andrew. "He attacked me. When my husband appeared, he chased him." Pete was stunned by this statement. "N'all on you, but it was by mutual consent." The policeman asked, "Ma'am, you need to go to the hospital to document the beatings and violence." "Fine. Can my husband drive me?" "Certainly. But you need to go right now. I'll stay here with the attacker until the ambulance arrives." The officer looked at Pete. "And you, I see, are safe and sound. Let me guess, are you a black belt or something?" Pete shook his head. "Something like that. I know how to protect myself and my family, but believe me, inside I am much more damaged than you can imagine." The officer nodded, and Joan sobbed on her husband's shoulder, realizing that it was not Andrew who caused her husband real pain, but she herself. Pete took Joan inside to get dressed for the trip to the hospital. She asked him to help her change clothes, but he refused. He didn't want to go up to the room in which he and his lover had just had sex. Joan looked as if she had aged 10 years in a few minutes. On their way out, they saw the policeman again. Pete asked, "Can you arrange for his car to be picked up by a tow truck? I don't want her to be here when we get back. Joan doesn't need to look at her." The policeman said he would take care of it. As soon as they left, there was silence in the car for a long time. Only halfway there, Joan broke the silence. "Say something, Pete. Yell at me, curse me, call me a damn woman of easy virtue again, but please tell me what's on your mind." Pete continued to drive. A minute later, he said, "Attacked you. Are you seriously going to pin it on him that he attacked you and wanted to have sex? Everyone knows that it was by mutual consent. I won't lie for you." Joan lowered her eyes. "I would like to use this as an opportunity to distance myself from him. He was becoming too controlling, and I was about to leave the firm." "Yes, I'm aware," Pete said, noticing the surprise on her face. "Just because I'm short doesn't mean I have little intelligence." She whispered quietly, "I know." He continued, "I would ask why you did this, but everything is clear." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "The sad thing is that I was ready for almost anything for you. You knew this very well, but there was one thing that I could not change, the thing that made you not take me seriously all these years. You shouldn't have married me, Joan. Please don't say that. I made a terrible mistake. But there were so many good things in our lives. We have a wonderful family, a wonderful home, and a good job. We had a good life. Well, except maybe your secret passion for taller and bigger men." This phrase hit her like a hammer. He added, "Besides, you should have thought about all these wonderful things before you decided to cheat. As a portfolio manager, you understand everything about risks. Understand? I was stupid. Can you? Forgive me." Pete shook his head. "Maybe someday, but definitely not now. So we have a chance to stay together." "No, this won't happen." "But why?" He laughed bitterly. "What do you think?" She said, "Because I cheated? But we can go to a psychologist. We can overcome this. Joan, it's not just changed. Your little friend sent me on Friday a link to a cloud where there are recordings of your sex sessions on Thursday and Friday." She shuddered at this fact. "I don't know if Andrew or Ricky did it. Doesn't matter. I heard it all. You will no longer worry about wearing heels and being taller than me. It never bothered me. But if this worries you, now you won't have to. You no longer have to worry that a short husband is an easy target, and you still think that Eva made up the story about Paris." Joan shook her head slightly. "Oh, and one more thing. FYI, when Ricky sent me the link, He said that his father promised him that he would find a way to have sex with you too. It is not surprising that he came to the yard as if it were his home. He had no respect for me or our marriage. Why respect when his father doesn't respect us? And you yourself were the first to not respect our marriage, Joan. She shuddered as she realized that she had been the first to break their sacred covenant, and she felt disgusted at the thought that Ricky actually thought he could have sex with her. She couldn't stand him, and now everything fell into place. He was hanging nearby to try to approach her too. How did she even get to this point? Pete, I don't even know what to say except that I'm really sorry. You may be sorry, but that's not enough. You've lost faith in me. You've lost respect for me. And even though I'm better than him in every way, even that wasn't enough for you, right? She was silent, looking out the window, and tears flowed down her cheeks. What now? She asked quietly. I was going to serve you with divorce papers today. But I'll wait a little, depending on how everything turns out in the coming days. We will still get divorced. It just won't be nice if I serve the papers on the same day that the attack on you allegedly happened. He asked, how are you going to pull off this story about violence? And what's with the shotgun show? Do you want to put an innocent person in prison? I really wanted to send him to the morgue, but you're just as guilty as he is. These words made her want to jump out of the car. Joan, he continued, haven't you told me why you grabbed the gun yet? She swallowed. I understood that anything could happen in a fight. I couldn't let him hurt you. I didn't know how long I had been passed out, and I had no idea what I would see when I ran outside. Well, did what you saw meet your expectations? They both understood the answer to this question. Pete, however, deep down appreciated her willingness to protect him, but at the same time thought, it would be better for her to think about my well-being 3 years ago and not sleep behind my back with that freak. A couple more minutes later, while in the car, Pete called Brian. Brian, this is Pete. Joan and I are going to the hospital. Everything is relatively okay with us, but we need a good lawyer, and urgently. I'll tell you the details later, most likely today. Oh, buddy, I'm sorry. I'll make some calls. Are you traveling to Williamson Medical Center? Yes, there. It's clear. I'm glad you chose our center. Sorry for the poor attempt at humor. I'll arrange everything. Just don't testify until you've met with a lawyer. Got it, Brian. Thank you. Pete hung up and looked at his future ex-wife. Did you hear what Brian said? This is a very dangerous game, and you must clearly understand what and how you will say it. Otherwise, you yourself will get entangled in false testimony and may end up in jail. Plus, there's also adultery. Your children and the rest of the family will really like going on visits to you in prison. Inwardly, Joan shuddered at her situation. Maybe I really should have jumped out of the car on the way. As Brian had promised, they were met at the entrance to the emergency department by the hospital's chief physician and senior legal advisor. They knew Brian well personally, and the lawyer turned out to be their distant relative. They were there to get straight to the point of examining them and to make sure Pete or Joan were not spoken to without a lawyer. When the lawyer arrived, she immediately asked what Joan wanted to achieve. They then documented in detail everything leading up to today, the length of the affair, some of the details, Ricky's involvement, the video footage taken at Andrews, and the Clark's home surveillance footage. For Joan, it was a moment of great humiliation. She was forced to tell everything in front of her husband. Pete was no longer angry. He seemed petrified. Who is this woman I lived with? He thought. As a result, the lawyer advised Joan to enter into a settlement agreement with Andrew so that he would pay her enough compensation to move to another firm. She believed that the district attorney's office was unlikely to take up the criminal case, given the length of the affair, which gives it a hint of resentment and revenge. In addition, Andrew will have his own version. A word-against-word situation will arise, and the chances of a real verdict are doubtful. Why should prosecutors waste time on a case where the jury may never reach a consensus? But Andrew will likely want to avoid a public court case to keep his name and the firm's name from making headlines. In addition, He is unlikely to want information to appear in the press about how he was beaten in the house of a married woman. At this point, Pete said that he would like to talk to Joan in private. I don't care whether the compensation amount is 10,000 or 10 million. In the divorce papers, I'm going to ask to keep the house, split all other assets in half, except for my consulting company, and no alimony. No, wait, you can keep the bed. After today, I'm disgusted with her. Do whatever you want with her. This phrase made Joan understand that she would actually be alone. She realized that she was to blame, but still the prospect of being left without the support of her husband frightened her. Are you really going to fight me for the house? She asked. After everything I've learned in the last few weeks, after what I've seen on video in the last few days, after what I saw in our bedroom today, and after what I did to your lover, you're still asking what I'm ready for. Yes, I can imagine different methods. For example, I can take these videos and send them to anyone I want. I have backups from your laptop on our home server, so I have contacts for all your clients and many other clients of the firm. Do you think many of them will want to stay with you after seeing how their financial advisor doesn't particularly value marital vows and isn't very smart in choosing partners? Ask your lover how angry I am and what I'm capable of. Believe me, he got off easy. And you would get off too if the house is the only thing I plan to keep for myself beyond the usual share. Every time he uttered the word lover, it felt like she was being stabbed with a hot iron rod. But there was no point in arguing. She could not deny the obvious. There were no mitigating circumstances. Realizing that she did not want to fight Pete for the consequences of her own mistakes, Joan agreed and decided that she would simply try to get at least some benefit from this asshole who helped destroy her marriage. Ultimately, after Andrew's operations, Joan received financial support from him. Compensation. It took a few weeks to negotiate and a couple more weeks to receive the check, but the amount was enough to keep Joan going for a couple of years if she couldn't quickly return to her previous level of income. Soon she actually got a job at the same investment company that Brian and Miriam used. They paid a little less there than at her previous place, but it was a large transnational company with growth prospects. She found a condo near her new job and set up a place to live there. 3 bedrooms so that the children have the opportunity to come and stay with her, at least sometimes. She gave away the old bedroom furniture. She didn't want anything to do with these memories. She tried to leave her mistakes in the past, but at night it was especially hard for her. She either fell into complete apathy or experienced bitter despair. She called Pete several times and cried into the phone before hanging up. Without saying anything, it seemed she needed to see a psychologist and also hoped for sympathy and support from her children and several siblings who lived nearby. One of the important moments in her new company was that she took some of her former clients away from Andrew with her. This was not difficult, because they loved her and, moreover, were ready to leave Andrew's company because someone gave the journalist the idea to find out the details of a police report related to an incident when Andrew arrived at the house of a married woman. It turned out that the police officer had written a fairly detailed description of the incident, including a story about a husband who was attacked but managed to take revenge, a victim who claimed to have been attacked, and a gun that a woman pointed at Andrew to protect her husband. The sensational news leaked to the newspapers and then ended up in the evening editions of local television channels. When Andrew left the hospital, he only answered questions with the words, "This is a private matter. No comments." As for Andrew, he had several operations, as a result of which he managed to save a damaged kidney, strengthen a broken rib, and partially restore the functionality of his manhood. It was hoped that one day he would still be able to achieve arousal, but another painful operation would probably be required. For Pete, it had been the longest few weeks of his life. He tried to spend as much time as possible traveling. The next few months, until Thanksgiving, were also painful. The day Joan moved in, he became physically ill. The breakup of their family was worse than the death of their grandparents. Eve was at least partially prepared for this. Thanks to what Ricky said, the seed of doubt was sown in advance and grew into the truth. She hated what her mother had done, hated it. How could you hurt your father like that? And although her father was 100% innocent, she understood that he would have a long time to come to his senses. As for her mother, Eva thought that she would somehow justify her actions or perhaps realize that she had made a mistake. Eva wanted to look after her and try to forgive her over time, but it took a lot of time to restore their relationship. Eve talked to Donnie in advance so the news wouldn't take him by surprise. He was furious at what his mother had done, but since he only had one semester left at Georgia Tech, he could just stay away from the whole mess and ignore his mother's calls if he wanted. All this was disgusting and made it very difficult for both him and Eva to concentrate on their studies. Under the terms of the divorce, the house went to Pete, but with the children leaving, it seemed to him that it would be better to sell it. Then the three sisters intervened, trying to cheer up Pete. They had a Halloween costume party at the house one Saturday. The estimated ratio of girls to guys was 4-1, which Pete was sure was what the three had intended. They persuaded him to dress up as Wolverine, wearing only jeans and no shirt. Since Joan left, Pete had been going to the gym more often and had become fit, and therefore looked quite ripped at that time. Of course, he was not built like Hugh Jackman. He never managed to gain much muscle mass. But he grew sideburns like Wolverine, bought gloves with retractable knife blades, added a thick, unlit cigar, and styled his hair upright. The cosplay turned out pretty good. He spent most of the evening working at the bar of non-alcoholic cocktails, although he guessed that many people had brought alcohol with them. He himself also added a little bourbon to the cola. That night, there were many seductive costumes, witches, nurses, and devils. Pete's 3 daughters dressed like Egyptian royalty. Pete assumed that the other 9 beauties from the pool party were also here, he just didn't remember their faces. He spotted several acquaintances, and although nothing overtly obscene seemed to be happening, the girls kept hugging Pete, pressing their breasts to his naked torso or back. Sometimes someone would hug him and try to press her buttocks against him for a second, flirting. By late evening, he was already pretty on edge when a stunning red-haired girl approached him in a sexy poison ivy costume, only a little more modest than the one Cardi B wore in 2019. She began to slowly press herself closer to Pete and, seizing the moment, persuaded him to retire to the pool house, where she immediately began to please him. He got excited very quickly, and then she even tried to have sex with him, and at a very energetic pace. At first, he resisted a little, deciding to pay attention to her herself. In just a few seconds, he laid her down on the sofa, completely concentrating on pleasing her. Judging by how tightly she squeezed his shoulders, everything was working out just fine for him. It only took her a couple of minutes to feel the rush of pleasure. Having caught her breath a little, she sat him on the sofa astride, without losing her passion. Their hugs became increasingly hotter, their movements more and more passionate. These were moments of pure, unbridled attraction, full of kisses, caresses, and complete dissolution in each other. As they lay recovering, this beauty kissed Pete on the lips and said, "Thank you, Mr. S. I've been wanting to do this ever since that pool party. It was worth the wait." Pete's head immediately cleared. Is this one of Eva's friends? The one from the party? Crap. Not wanting to embarrass anyone, he kissed her and suggested returning to the party before they were missed. He pulled on his jeans, but she was faster. She knelt down and, despite his attempts to gently pull away, continued the game, bringing him to full readiness. Then she turned her back, pulled him towards her again, and accepted him with ease. Pete honestly didn't mind too much. Since he was older, the second time was more difficult for him, but for her, this was only a plus. She pulled his hands to her chest, encouraging him to squeeze it harder. Pete felt waves of pleasure sweep through her, her legs trembled, and she had to look for support. Then he picked her up so she could lean on the back of the sofa, and after a few minutes he himself reached the top. Oh my God, it was amazing. I managed to experience everything several times before you. Usually guys my age don't last that long. Hopefully we can do this again in a calmer environment. Thank you, Mr. S. You are the best. She pulled on her shiny green shorts and vine-covered bodice, kissed him passionately, and walked out. Pete, having come to his senses a little, was shocked, but still pleased. Looking out the door of the house, he noticed Poison Ivy and Lily having a heated discussion on the patio at the other end of the pool. He didn't hear the words, but Lily was clearly beside herself. Shrugging, he returned to the bar and remained there for the rest of the party. He still had a good time, even if he felt a little awkward due to the large age difference. But it was clear that he did not feel like a stranger in the women's team. When his three daughters helped clean up at the end of the evening, it was clear that something was bothering them. Neither spoke to him or to each other, and Lily was especially cold. This hurt Pete, but he decided not to make a big deal out of it, hoping it would all go away in the morning. He got up a little later than usual and started preparing breakfast for the girls. He made French toast and bacon. When I heard their steps upstairs, I had already put fresh fruit on the table. It turned out to be a real buffet. Eva came down first and hugged her father tightly. Lily followed, but she silently poured herself some coffee and walked out onto the patio. Then Carrie, seeing this, also hugged Pete and said, "Don't worry, Mr. S. She will thaw out soon. I'll take her the plate." While Carrie left, Pete looked questioningly at Eve. "What did I do?" Eve helped Carrie put the food on a plate, and when her friend left, she turned to Pete. "Dad, everything is fine. It's not your fault. Lily is just mad about you and Penny." "Penny? Who is Penny?" "Apparently, the same Poison Ivy. Apparently, you two got to know each other quite well." Eve raised an eyebrow. Pete frowned. "And what?" "Well, yes." She fell silent for a second. Oddly enough, I'm even happy for you. Judging by the way Penny glowed as she walked away from the house, your meeting was a success. Many people envied her yesterday. I even wondered if anyone would convince you to come to the pool house. Did you know everything?" "Certainly. Although Lily didn't like it at all, we saw everything. I can't say it was deliberately planned, but I suspected someone would try. I'm sorry if I embarrassed you. Your father and a girl your age." "Not really. I may be embarrassed, but I'm also happy for you. Apparently, you needed it." "Then why doesn't Lily talk to me? She knows that I treat her like a daughter, and in principle nothing could ever happen between us." "Yes, we all know that, Dad. Don't worry. I'll explain it to you later. Believe me, everything will work out." When the girls left, the atmosphere calmed down a little, and Lily, getting ready to go home, hugged Pete with tears in her eyes. "I love you, Dad. Sorry for being angry. It's not your fault. I just love you very much." Pete looked at the others, and everyone looked upset, but no one was in a hurry to explain. For Thanksgiving, Eva split her time between her parents. Since Donnie was staying in Atlanta for the holidays, Brian and Miriam invited Pete and Eve to join them, Carrie, and other relatives for Thanksgiving. Pete brought a lot of beer, and after dinner he, Brian, and the rest of the men, both old and young, enjoyed football on TV. Lily spent the holiday with family in Nashville. Joan celebrated with relatives from her side of the family. The good news was that Donnie called Pete and said he had accepted a position as an engineer at the GM plant in Spring Hill, about 25 minutes south of Franklin. Everyone was glad that he was returning home. Joan was happy for her son, but she was sad that she was no longer living in the house where Donnie planned to stay until he found his own place to live. She felt like a complete fool. Back home and preparing for his new job, Donnie had dinner one evening with his father and three daughters. This was the first time in over 4 years that Donnie and Lily spent significant time together. Donnie turned out to be a taller and more attractive version of Pete, having inherited his appearance from his mother. And Lily, over these 4 years, has turned into a luxurious young woman. They clearly liked each other. But as happens when everyone around you is waiting for the perfect match, things may not work out right away. At the end of the evening, it was obvious that they were mutually attracted, but did not become particularly close. When everyone went to bed, there was a slight note of disappointment in the air. Later that night, everyone was in their rooms upstairs except Pete. He sat on the back patio by the fire, looking at the dying coals and drinking beer. He was surprised when he heard Carrie's voice. "Can I join you?" "Of course, honey, sit next to me." He lifted the blanket, and the fragile girl comfortably settled down next to him. She said, "It's all a little disappointing, isn't it?" Not at all. It seems that everyone expected that Donnie and Lily, upon seeing each other, would rush towards each other in a romantic impulse. But they don't really know each other anymore. But they have a lot in common, and they have entire families who support them and want them to try to build a relationship. I will gently push them to go on dates and spend time together. I truly believe that they are made for each other. Carrie pressed herself closer to him. "Thank you, Dad. You just lifted my spirits." As she stood up to leave, she suggested, "Maybe we can stay. I already want to be alone for a while, but if you want, stay." "No, now I can sleep peacefully. Thank you." "You'll tell them all this, right?" "You can rest assured." Pete just rolled his eyes. The next morning at breakfast, the girls were in great spirits. Lily came over, hugged Pete tightly, and then sat down next to him. Carrie asked, "Mr. S., have you seen Donnie this morning?" "No. I got up recently. Need to wake him up?" "No need." At that moment, Donnie walked in, sweaty and out of breath. "Hi all. Leave me some bacon, okay? I'll be back soon." Pete asked, "What, were you running?" He nodded. "Son, are you sure you graduated from college?" "Yes, and I have a diploma." Pete shook his head. "Go take a shower, otherwise the girls will lose their appetite." Carrie and Lily looked intrigued as they followed Donnie, and Eva just rolled her eyes. When the door closed behind Donnie, Pete smiled at Lily. "Sorry, Lily. I'll bet you $1,000 that he just didn't think anyone else would want to run with him. But now, having understood this, he will not forget." For the first time, Lily felt embarrassed. The rest of the weekend went great. Before the girls left, Donnie approached Lily and suggested they go for a walk. Everyone pretended not to notice, although they were really looking forward to the result. When they saw both of them smiling, everyone was happy. Lily nearly broke Pete's rib when she hugged him goodbye. After they left, Pete asked Donnie, "When?" "Tomorrow evening. Just the two of us." Pete nodded. That was a good start. By Christmas and New Year, Pete was already suffering quite thoroughly from loneliness, but he also endured everything steadfastly. "Going to visit my parents for Christmas was strange without Joan, and it felt like someone had died, or maybe even worse. On New Year's Eve, Pete was left alone, and it was even somewhat normal for him. The children were at some kind of party. He was glad that they were taking care of the affairs of the young people and not babysitting him. He even thought about calling Penny, but he felt like a fool and didn't. The next weekend, when the girls arrived, everything was great. He found them in his closet, and when he asked what they were doing there, they laughed it off. They imagined what he would look like in his old clothes. Pete just smiled and rolled his eyes. Just before they left on Sunday, they asked if he had any plans for the weekend after Valentine's Day. "No, there is nothing yet. Would you like to come?" "No," Carrie said. "We're going to get you out into the world, so don't make any plans." Lily and Eva could barely contain their smiles. As the new year began, Pete traveled frequently for work, meeting with clients and discussing plans. One day, Joan called and asked permission to stay in the house with Donnie while Pete was away. He didn't mind. It was important for him that Donnie and his mother could calmly restore their relationship, and the house from him to his son's work was closer than from her rented home. At the end of the second week of January, Pete finished business in Denver a few hours early and decided to catch the last flight back home that evening. He didn't call ahead so Joan wouldn't run away in a hurry. So Donnie and Joan, who were peacefully watching an old movie, were very surprised when they heard the garage doors open and saw Pete enter. It was their first look at each other in months. Both looked a little tense, as if they were expecting a scandal. Joan began. "Pete, I'm sorry. I thought you'd only be here tomorrow." Pete remained silent, walked up to his son and hugged him, then, turning to his ex-wife, literally pulled her off the sofa into his arms. "I didn't want you to pack your things in a panic and leave. I'm tired, I'm going to bed, so stay until the morning." Joan was stunned, but willingly hugged Pete tightly. "Thank you, Pete." He just shrugged his shoulders and went to bed, took a shower and went to bed. Around midnight, Pete felt the bed dip. After a few seconds, he realized that his ex-wife had laid down with him and pressed herself against his back. She slipped her hand under his, he lightly squeezed her palm and fell back into sleep. Pete was quite comfortable. He had no intention of having sex with Joan, no matter how much he wanted to, but he began to let go of the pain and hoped that she would too. Now that everything was settled and approved by the court, he wanted to remain as friendly as possible with her, because he still loved her and did not want the children to turn their backs on their mother. They're just not a couple anymore, period. In the morning, when Pete woke up, Joan was no longer asleep. When she was sure he was awake, she kissed him on the cheek and said, "Thank you, Pete. You didn't deserve what I did. I still love you, and I'm so sorry." Before he could answer, she stood up and went to get ready for work. They even hugged before she left. After that night, things actually got a little easier, or at least it seemed that way. The following week, Pete received an unexpected call from his ex-wife. After the usual greetings, she said, "Pete, thank you for being so warm to me. I may be overstepping my bounds, but would you like to do something together sometime? There will be an interesting event soon, and I think you would like it. I'll organize everything. It doesn't have to be a date. I just want to spend time with you." Perhaps Joan relied too much on Pete's friendliness and saw something more in him, but he didn't want to once again trample her wounded feelings. "Joan, I don't think this is the best idea yet. I feel more comfortable being with you when the children are nearby or all together, but just the two of us. I'm not ready yet. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but not yet." "I understand," she answered quietly. "Sorry, I just miss you." Pete missed him too. "Everything is fine. Everything will work out for us, you'll see." Joan really hoped that this meant they could spend time together someday. By the end of January, Donnie and Lily had already gone on several dates and became quite close. The most awkward moments occurred when they were with their family. Everyone seemed to expect an immediate engagement. They discussed it and decided that it would get better over time if their feelings progressed. Pete didn't celebrate Valentine's Day because he didn't have a date, but he looked forward to the weekend after the holiday with curiosity, not understanding what the girls were up to. When the big day arrived, he received a message from Eva. "Your weekend starts at 4:30 p.m., so plan things accordingly." At 16:30, the girls appeared in the house, dressed up and with packages. They immediately headed upstairs. Pete became interested and followed them. "I heard them in the bedroom. I noticed my best suit on the bed." Eva handed him a couple of things. "Dad, use this soap and this soapy foam for shaving. They have a pleasant aroma, and if you use your usual products, we will have to forcefully wash you, and don't make us call Lily. And be ready to leave the house at 5:30 p.m. We have a restaurant reservation for 6:15 p.m. Pete laughed. Okay. I don't want the three of you to wash me, unless Penny." Here he winked, remembering poison ivy. Eva looked disapprovingly. "If you weren't my father, I would call you out for this." Carrie chimed in. "Come on, he was just joking. Everything will be fine, Eva. Believe me." Eva sighed. "Okay, Dad, just do as we ask. We promise you will love it." "Of course, honey. Just kidding." The aroma had notes of sandalwood, a classic masculine scent, and the tailor of Old Bond Street shaving foam also smelled similar and gave a great shave. Pete changed his clothes. On his suit was a new, more expensive shirt and tie. Apparently, the girls thought of everything. Going downstairs, he asked, "Will Donnie and Lily be there?" "It's a surprise," Eva answered evasively. Carrie added, "Just remember, I wanted to take you somewhere to have fun." Pete was alarmed by this. "Send me." At that moment, a large black Mercedes-class limousine stopped at the sidewalk. Lily, also in full regalia, emerged from the front passenger door and walked over to hug Pete. It was clear from her that she was very worried. Meanwhile, the driver, in a classic suit and cap, walked around the car to open the back door. Pete frowned. "Lily, beautiful car. Is Donnie really driving? No, Dad. Donnie simply said that he had better stay away so as not to spill the beans. Don't spill the beans. What are we even talking about? Eva smiled. Dad, we set it all up. You have a date today. Pete's smile faded. Girls, I appreciate your efforts in caring about me, but I'm not sure I'm ready for a real date. I thought we were just all going to go somewhere together. Carrie smiled. We're sure you'll like it. We know that you are suitable for each other. Why do we need Tinder when we exist? Pete felt his insides clench with strange anxiety. Carrie continued. We are so confident in this that even my parents supported the idea. Here, take the phone. This is for you. Pete, taking the phone, asked hesitantly. Hello? Brian's voice came over the phone. Hello, buddy. I know this will shock you. And yes, you may not be ready yet. But we fully trust the girls and advise you to trust you too. Remember when you told Carrie that you didn't know another couple who was so good for each other and they just needed time and opportunity and families who loved them around. So we all want the same thing for you and your rendezvous. Miriam and I have known her for a long time, and I'm sure you'll love her. If you give it a chance, it will be a great evening. And then the girls will ask you for something else, so. Okay, Pete, good evening. Pete handed the phone to Carrie, and she said, I want you to promise me that you will try to enjoy it. I understand it may be awkward at first, but please try. We have thought through everything very carefully and made every effort to ensure that you both enjoy this evening. Pete nodded, but his enthusiasm was fading with every second. Eva turned to him. Dad, please be open for tonight. She cares about you very much and is great for you. We all love you and want you to be happy. Hearing this, Pete thought, God, not Joan. Just don't let Joan sit in that car. Lily hugged the man she had looked up to for so long and said, You know you're the only dad I've ever had, right? Pete nodded again. I know you're still hurting, and I'm sorry that's the case. But I'm begging you to do just one thing for me, please. As soon as you get into the car, kiss her. Don't wait and don't say anything, just kiss me once for me. Please, Dad, can you do this for me? Now, Pete didn't know what to say. Who could be in this car? Oh God, if only it weren't Joan, he thought again. He looked at the three girls who had become sisters, and for whom he would not hesitate to give his life, and said, Okay, I'll do it. I love you so much. He saw their excited faces and tears in the eyes of Lily and Eva. Tears almost came to his eyes. With more resignation than joy, he allowed the driver to open the back door and got into the car. Entering the car, he immediately realized who was sitting there. If he had seen her smile, he would have recognized her instantly. She looked almost as excited as the girls. Before him was a woman with whom he had long felt a special connection. She was wearing a beautiful black dress of medium length. As she sat, Pete clearly noticed her slender legs in stockings and what appeared to be 3-inch shiny stilettos. The dress hugged her graceful figure, seemed to be made of satin or silk, sleeveless, and with a turtleneck. She wore a beautiful double strand of pearl necklace around her neck with matching pearl drop earrings. Her shoulders were covered with a luxurious cashmere cape. Her hair was pulled up, emphasizing the solemnity of the outfit. Pete had never seen her like this before. If Donnie is very, very lucky, Lily will look exactly the same in 20 years. It was Lily's mother, Rose. Hello, Pete. Pete didn't hesitate. Inside the big car, the center armrest was a bit of a nuisance, but he quickly used it as a rest for his left arm and placed his right hand gently on her neck and kissed the mother of his adopted daughter the way Lily wanted, at the same time rejoicing at the thought that the person he least wanted to see here did not appear in the car. Come to think of it, there was hardly anyone he would rather be with right now. Just yesterday, he thought of Rose only as a friend. Rose literally melted into this man's kiss. She wasn't sure what to expect when he saw her, but he smelled so good, and that kiss instantly eased her anxiety about the evening ahead. When Pete saw her open her wonderful almond-colored eyes, he smiled, hoping he wouldn't get slapped. She answered him with a dazzling smile. Well, I definitely didn't expect such a greeting, but I'm very pleased. He said, "Our daughter begged me to kiss the woman sitting in that car. For her sake, I would kiss anyone who was here, but when I saw that it was you, I sighed with relief and was happy at the same time." Rose said, "I didn't know how you would react. To be honest, as soon as your divorce was announced, Lily was already making plans to get us together. I'm sorry that things turned out this way for you and Joan. I'm sorry, I really am." She continued, "I told Lily that you need to be given time. Personally, I have been interested in you for a long time, but I decided to wait 6 months after your divorce. And then, in the first week of November, someone circled that date in red on my calendar, and everything has been set up ever since. I don't think I could say no even if I wanted to. And I didn't want to. I've been looking forward to this evening for months." Pete chuckled slightly, remembering the first week of November and speculating that his little incident with Penny might have led to this. It also explained why Lily was angry with Penny back then. He replied, "If I had known that everything would be exactly like this, I would also be looking forward to this evening. I thought I was going somewhere with Donnie and 3 girls. Do you know what we have planned? All I know is that we are going to dinner, and then we have tickets to the Philharmonic, some kind of concert that they thought we would both enjoy." Pete was amused by this. It sounded like a great date for both of them. On the way, they made up for lost time, because now that the girls were studying and living in city apartments, they did not communicate so often. Pete shared how his business is going, and Rose shared the challenges of teaching advanced math to gifted high school students. "Sometimes it seems to me that I should have remained a girls' volleyball coach." Pete laughed as he imagined it. She was indeed a good coach, but as a math teacher, she was considered a very strong educator who prepared her students for success on the SAT. He could not resist and said, "It's a shame that I don't see you in those shorts anymore when you were a coach, but you do a lot as a teacher. Frankly, this is the first time in many years that I see your legs. I missed this view." She appreciated this and raised the hem of her dress another centimeter. "Thank you for saying that. I didn't even think you ever paid attention. Even when I joined you and the girls on the Gulf Coast for a few days, you never seemed to look my way." Well, I was married and couldn't afford to say something like that, trying not to stare. But believe me, I always noticed. How can you not pay attention? You've always had amazing legs. How come you are still not married? Let's talk about this better over dinner or later, when I relax a little with wine. They talked. We dined at one of the well-established restaurants in downtown Nashville Merchants. The ground floor, there is something like a bistro, and on the top floor, there is a real gourmet restaurant. The girls ordered a great table for them. The driver gave them tickets to the Philharmonic, since it was only 2 blocks away, and said that he would pick them up from there when the concert was over. Pete immediately assumed that this would be the case. As soon as he saw her in those heels, he realized that she would be taller than him all evening. Normally, this wouldn't bother him. What kind of man would be uncomfortable with such a beautiful woman on his arm? And Rose was certainly very attractive, at least to Pete. However, after his ex-wife's recent words, he couldn't help but wonder if these comments of hers would haunt him. Will he ever be able to get rid of them? The dinner went wonderfully, and since they had common daughters and had known each other for many years, the conversation was easy and relaxed. Several times during dinner, Rose would put her hand on Pete's hand, laughing, and then get embarrassed and remove it, usually with a shy expression on her face. When it was time to go to the Philharmonic, Pete gallantly offered her his hand, and she, smiling, accepted it. And so they reached their seats, in a box next to the stage, just above its level. All this time they walked hand in hand. The concert was called Morricone Duel, the most dangerous concert of all, originally performed for the first time by the Danish National Symphony Orchestra. The Nashville Symphony received permission to repeat the same program, only changing the order of some works. The program stated, "The Wild West meets soulful Italian motifs. Fearless New York gangsters are next to the cowboys of the dusty prairie. The Godfather meets Taxi Driver. and the magic of cinema meets the multifaceted sound of a symphony orchestra and choir. The performance was first class, and Rose and Pete sat slightly pressed together during the concert. By the time the final track, The Ecstasy of Gold, came on, they were already holding hands. It was a magnificent end to the concert. The choir sang at the top of their lungs, and a soloist from the Nashville Opera performed a solo part. It all ended on a bright crescendo. As the last note sounded, Rose squeezed Pete's hand. "This gives me goosebumps. Feel it." Pete could already see the small bumps on her skin, but he did not refuse the invitation and ran his palm over her arm, feeling the small hairs stand on end. Rose covered his hand with hers, hinting that she liked his touch and wanted a little more. The touches were pleasant. She herself encouraged him to touch her skin, and Pete knew that he wanted to touch Rose even more today. She felt the same. Pete placed his hand on her neck again and pulled her in for a gentle kiss. She said contentedly. They both definitely didn't mind more hugs and kisses. Slowly, they moved towards the exit, still holding hands. The driver was already waiting for them at the exit, who, seeing the couple, hurried to the back door to open it for them. But they were not unnoticed in the hall. Joan and her cousin Candace saw Pete and Rose. Candace asked, "This is him?" Joan was so shocked that she could not utter a word. She just nodded and burst into tears. It was this concert that Joan wanted to invite Pete to, hoping that the beautiful music would revive the memories of their special evenings together. But now he was here with someone else, and not just anyone, but with Lily's mother, Rose. The expressions on their faces, gestures, and expressions of tenderness showed how close they were. Joan understood that all this was once intended for her. This was her worst fear. She hoped that Pete would survive a series of fleeting relationships, find no satisfaction there, and return to his only love. But what she now saw shattered all hopes. She and Rose had Lily in common, whom Pete adored. Joan also loved her adopted daughter, but Lily already had a mother, and Pete was really her father. Joan never saw Rose as a threat because she knew she was very decent and that Pete was incapable of cheating. But now Joan was reminded, if she had not cheated herself, she would not have watched this scene. She herself brought to naught the fire of love and passion that was raging in their relationship, turning it into a tiny smoldering spark at the bottom of an extinguished fire. When she saw Pete and Rose get into the car, holding hands, she realized that this spark had been mercilessly trampled on. In her estimation, the likelihood that she would ever get Pete back was about the same as Rose's dress, not ending up on Pete's bedroom floor that evening, which was almost zero. Candace noticed the changing emotions on Joan's face, from shock to despair to complete disappointment. She realized that she would have to console her stupid cousin for the rest of the evening. She felt sorry for her, but it was not a sudden fall into the abyss. Joan had been digging herself a hole deeper and deeper for a long time, ignoring the fact that she could not get out. Candace put her arm around Joan's shoulders and led her to the car. Meanwhile, the happy couple was taken to a new high-fashion hotel in the center of Nashville, where a respectable man in an expensive suit was already waiting for them at the entrance. "Hello, I'm Mark Simpson, hotel manager. Welcome. I've been asked to escort you to your table. Follow me, please." Mark led them to the elevators, which rushed higher and higher until they reached the top floor. From there, he led them to a bar with a panoramic view of the rapidly changing cityscape. A talented duo performed on stage, a young pianist and a vocalist, who performed jazz and songs in the big band style. The atmosphere was pleasant, the crowd was quite sophisticated. Before leaving, Mark said, "Your rooms are on the floor below." He handed them a small envelope with key cards. "Your daughters put your luggage in your rooms in advance. For the two of you, everything at the hotel today and tomorrow is paid for. This is our special welcome. I hope you have a great evening. If you need anything, let me know. Enjoy your stay." He left his business card on the table and left. The waiter came over and they ordered drinks. She had a White Russian, and Pete decided to take a good-aged Armagnac since he understood that Carrie would be paying the bill. They relaxed and enjoyed each other's company. After a while, Pete said, "Can you imagine? They also booked rooms for us. I don't even know if this is too bold." Rose replied, "Carrie joked this afternoon that she wanted to take us to the Caribbean with her. And about this night, I think they just decided to play it safe. You know these three. Lily is the dreamer, Eve is the project manager, and Carrie is the one who finances it all. Together, they could open a very successful business." Pete agreed and laughed. Their poor future husbands. She suddenly became serious. "This will require very strong men." Pete, not noticing the change in her tone, continued in the same cheerful spirit. "And extremely patient," Rose added, "and also loving and caring. I am glad that we already know one of them. After all, he was raised by the best people in the world." Pete noticed the expression on her face, extended his hand, and said, "Beautiful Rose, will you dance with me?" She readily agreed. There were very few couples on the dance floor, but she literally melted in the arms of a slightly shorter man, feeling absolutely happy in his arms. Pete, while dancing, was a little divided. How could he develop such feelings for this woman so quickly? Is he confusing his father's love for Lily with his feelings for her mother? They slowly danced together perfectly and were silent most of the time, just enjoying the embrace. After a few tunes, Pete leaned down and kissed the soft skin between her jaw and ear, and then several times, moving to her neck. Rose responded with a languid, "Mm." After a few wonderful moments, she asked, "Pete, how would you like to continue this dance in one of our numbers?" He kissed her softly on the lips in agreement and led her to the elevators. On their floor, he opened the envelope with the cards and saw that both envelopes had the same number on them. He laughed and showed them to Rose. Cunning little pranksters. They actually had two separate bedrooms, but they were located inside one large two-room suite. Once in the room, Pete turned on the music on his phone, and they started dancing again, quickly moving on to just hugging and kissing. After a couple of minutes, all the dancing stopped, and Pete gently kissed her neck. He knew what he wanted, and he hoped that she wanted it too. He slowly pulled the clasp of the dress, and as the zipper revealed more of the silk, he kissed the new exposed area of skin. Rose threw her head back, approving of his actions with a soft moan. When the zipper was down low enough, she unzipped it all the way and stepped out of the dress, revealing a beautiful white mini corset, a very lacy thong, and garter stockings. Pete couldn't help but say, "Wow," when he saw her. The contrast of the white and her dark skin was amazing. He thought she looked simply luxurious. Rose said, "Lily chose this set. The dress was Carrie's idea. Eva picked out your shirt, and I picked out your tie. I have no idea who knows how much I like your shower gel, but damn, you smell so good. Kiss me again, Pete." And he did it. His lips continued to caress her shoulders and décolleté. When he rose to her lips, she remarked in a whisper, "I think you missed one place." Pete grinned knowingly and returned to her neck. Here, Rose shook her head slowly. "No." He began to kiss her a little lower. And here, she exhaled again. "No, but I'm pleased. Continue." When he got to the chest. And here, she shook her head again and said, "No, but you're doing pretty well. Just don't stop, and I'll tell you when you get there." Several minutes passed like this. Pete explored her body with his lips and tongue, and Rose enjoyed every touch. When he began to gently kiss between her legs, she realized that she wanted to move to the bed. Having laid her on the bed, Pete saw with what half-closed and seductive gaze she was looking at him. Even during the day, it was difficult for her to imagine that everything would go so far, but now, after spending the evening with him, she felt that this was exactly what she had dreamed about. He was the man she had been looking for a long time, and she was going to convince him to stay. Pete quickly took off his clothes. As he continued his caresses, Rose began to pull off her thong. Pete helped her. When he saw the completely well-groomed body, he exclaimed, "I don't know if you did this specifically for this evening, but it's amazing. You are beautiful, Rose. As they say, so good that you want to eat it." Rose pulled him towards her. "Actually, it's thanks to our daughter." Yesterday, we all went to the salon. They told me that it would just be a light correction, but in the end, they removed all the hairs from the roots. I'm surprised you and half of Nashville didn't hear me scream. Our girls laughed. As Pete continued to gently caress her, Rose began to think that maybe all the pain was worth it. Remind me to thank them tomorrow, he said, because it looks like I'll be stuck here for a long time. I really hope so. And so it happened. Come to me, my love. I need to feel you. Pete hugged Rose tightly, looking into her eyes, and felt a quiet, peaceful feeling spreading inside. The world seemed right again. He wondered if this had to do with Rose herself, with her magnetic energy, or with something deeper that was brewing between them. He did not plan for this evening to lead them to such a rapprochement, but everything happened naturally, as a logical continuation of their conversation and mutual understanding. During these few hours, he felt a special closeness with her, going beyond sympathy. For a moment, he was struck by the thought, isn't their relationship developing too quickly? However, after a few minutes, it became clear to both of them that the climax was close. After a short cleaning break, they returned to bed where Rose said, "Come to me, Pete. I want to fall asleep in your arms." A night full of tenderness awaited them. Even if this was just the beginning, but already now they both understood that they felt much more for each other than just sympathy. They enjoyed the unity of souls and bodies. Waking up in the morning, Pete saw that Rose was already looking at him. She said, "Good morning, darling." These words of hers inspired him. He replied, "Good morning, sunshine." She smiled. "I liked what happened at night, everything without exception. But maybe I appreciated even more how nice it is to wake up next to you." He felt the same. How did it happen that such a close and dear person lies next to him? So, he finally got a second chance, and so soon. And I understand what you mean. Now I look at you and think about only two things. First of all, how can I make sure I see that wonderful smile every morning? Your smile is like a small miracle like dawn, and the happy smile of a baby in one bottle. And secondly, how can I get you to call me darling every morning? Rose leaned over and kissed him on the lips. "Thank you. You know, I would like that too." He asked, "And now, beautiful Rose, will you tell me why no one has taken hold of you yet? Although, to be honest, I'm just glad that didn't happen." The smile immediately disappeared from Rose's face. Pete was afraid that he had asked the wrong question. She replied, "I was going to wait for a more opportune moment when I had liquid courage, but, okay. There's not much to say here. After my divorce from Derek, which happened long before I met you, I was in no rush to get married again. Lily was still very young, and I wanted to think things through. 11 years ago, when Lily was 8, I, in general, wasn't looking for anyone. And suddenly a man appeared in my life who set the bar so high that I decided, if I get married, it will only be to a man who is really suitable for me and my girl. Since then, I went on dates with a lot of people, kissed a lot of frogs, but I never found a prince. Would you like me to show you something?" She got out of bed and took her phone out of her small purse. As she walked back, Pete remarked, "You know, I'll probably quickly get used to the fact that you walk around naked in front of me." Rose smiled. "Pervert. All men would be such perverts if they saw you." She sat down on the bed again and kissed him. "I hope you'll be the only one." She opened the photo on her phone. "Do you remember this photo?" Pete smiled. He also had fond memories of this moment. The photo shows Brian being hugged by Carrie, and on the other side, Eve is holding Pete's hand and smiling. In the middle is Lily. She hugs Pete and kisses him on the cheek. Rose continued, "This is one of my and Lily's favorite photos. I think you remember that night at the state fair, that very first year, when Lily became friends with Eve and Carrie. There was air rifle shooting and Lily wanted to play, and you immediately stood next to her and helped her win a prize. Then you helped Eve, and Brian helped Carrie. You may not have noticed, but you were a father to both Eve and Lily that evening. Without hesitation, without thinking, you simply surrounded Lily with care, as if she were your own." "Yeah, it wasn't difficult," Pete answered. "How can you not love Lily?" "That's it. But you were not just a good person who felt sorry for someone else's girl. You were and remain a magnificent man who always loved my daughter as if she were your own. After that evening, for another month, she only talked about the fair and about you. And then her euphoria intensified again as soon as the girls got together, and you invariably paid attention to her. You were a father to her, and she responded with great love to you. All of Lily's relatives listened to these stories about you. Remember how much my mom hugged you at Lily's graduation. So I didn't need to get married quickly so that she would have a good man in her life. He already was. It was you. I could calmly sort through the frogs in search of the prince, realizing that Lily already had a king. You know, it would be difficult to marry a man and bring him into your life if he was not at least partly like you. I was quite content to just look around and wait for the right person, believing that one day I would find him. I was in no hurry to choose whoever I have to, and didn't do it. The few times I had to leave and couldn't take her with me, there was no question of where she would live. She stayed with your family while I was away so I wouldn't miss school. You were always there for her, with us. We may not become more than what we are now, but you and I will always have a lifelong bond because of my daughter, our daughter. She hugged him, saying the words, our daughter. Have you noticed that since we went on our graduation trip to Spain, she hasn't called you anything other than Dad? Even at my house, when you are not around, she talks about you as her dad. And for her and for me, this is exactly the case. Rose fell silent, afraid that she had said more than Pete was ready to hear. She added, sorry, Pete. I hope this doesn't upset you. That's why I didn't dare explain why I wasn't married. I don't want to scare you away. He smiled at her and kissed her on the lips. Everything is fine. You can't scare me that easily. She smiled back. Yes, I noticed that. Rose put her phone down and rolled over, pressing herself against Pete so that their bodies were touching. What now, Pete? Last night was wonderful, and it was so easy for us. Maybe even too easy. Do we as a couple have any further? Pete took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Basically, in this way, he bought himself a few extra seconds to collect his thoughts. His feelings and thoughts rushed in different directions. He began to gently stroke her hand and said, I know what my mind tells me, what my heart says, and then there is what my intuition tells me. Rose replied, you can tell me everything, Pete. Just be honest, even if it's not what I want to hear. After a couple of seconds, he admitted, everything may sound chaotic, so don't judge too harshly. My mind says we're moving too fast, and that last night was a mistake. No matter how much I want us to move on together, there is a signal in my head. Careful, take your time. Rose didn't like the sound of that, but she appreciated his honesty. What does the heart say? Pete replied, it's the simplest thing. The heart whispers that we need to immediately catch the next flight to Vegas and get married today. Rose liked this idea much better, but she also understood that it was too hasty even for her. What does your intuition tell you? She asked. He smiled and said, my intuition tells me to make love to you all morning and then live happily ever after. And in my opinion, we have every chance of this. We know each other well and have more in common than many couples at the start of their lives together. We are old enough to understand how much work living together requires. And it seems to me, both you and I really want this, which means we will both try not to let little things come between us. I hope we are not so accustomed to our own way of life that we cannot meet each other halfway when disagreements arise. I believe that everything can work out for us. But to be honest, I don't know how to start. Rose hugged him tightly. She liked all his words. They said that he was serious about her, about them, and that he consciously approached the development of relationships. She liked it too. Why don't we start by making love like you suggested? Then we will take a shower together, and then order breakfast to our room luxurious, delivered. And over breakfast, we'll discuss how we'll spend the rest of the weekend. And also, at some point, we will have to write to our children, because I'm sure they are dying to know how we are doing. Let them wait a little longer. I'm already getting turned on just by the thought of making love to you again. Rose smiled flirtatiously at Pete and ran her fingers lightly over his chest. He pulled her closer, wrapping his warm palms around her, and began to cover her skin with gentle kisses. They enjoyed intimacy. Every moment was filled with passion and mutual desire. Their touches became more and more bold, and their breathing became intermittent. Soon they completely surrendered to this moment, forgetting about everything except each other. Unlike the relaxed and gentle caresses last night, this time everything was energetic and fun, and both of them were satisfied. In the shower, Pete became aroused again without any problems, but warned that the chances of quickly reaching climax after everything that had happened that night and morning were slim. So Rose enjoyed him thoroughly under the spray and promised him that she would give him another chance later. Well, will there be something to strive for? Pete grinned. Hope? Personally, I'm looking forward to it, she replied. Exercising with each other in the morning ensured they were in a great mood at breakfast. They wrote to Lily that the date had gone great, but they still needed time to figure everything out, so they asked the girls, as well as Donnie, not to show up at any of the houses until Sunday evening. On Sunday, everyone was waiting for a joint dinner in a house that they would choose. At breakfast, Pete asked, "So, should we start at my place or yours?" If you are asking about the solemn consecration of all the rooms, then, of course, you have more of them. She smiled slyly. Pete gave her a similar smile. I like the way you think, but I had in mind, perhaps, something else. Maybe we won't have endless dates and overnight stays separately, but we'll immediately choose one house, move in and live together, developing our relationship. She looked into his eyes. Are you serious? Absolutely. We both know what we want, so let's not delay. Honestly, I don't see the benefit of us spending time apart. Then to you. To me, he asked again. Yes, let's try to live with you first. If suddenly this seems inconvenient, then you can move in with me. And if that doesn't work, we'll find ourselves a new shared place to live, or something like that. But I also like the way you reason. I have long wanted to live closer to you, and now my wish has come true. Then let's come to your place and pack your things. I'm ready. Let's go. They refused the limousine service so that the children would not understand what they were up to. Instead, they called an Uber and drove to Rose's place, where she quickly packed her things and her car. Rose's house was a 10-minute drive from Pete's and was very cozy. As they finished touring the house and packing clothes and supplies for the coming week, Pete remarked, "You know, I've only been to your house a couple of times in all these years, but I've always liked it. If you suddenly decide that it's better to live here, I don't mind." Thank you. First, let's see how it goes for you. I like your house too, especially since you have a pool house, and your gazebo. I met Derek a long time ago because we were both sports stars at MSU. He played football and I played volleyball. He was not a good husband or father, but when he signed his first decent contract in the NFL, he handed me divorce papers and a generous check. I didn't waste it. When I got a job as a coach in this school district, I was able to buy a house with that money. He wasn't a terrible guy, just too immature for a family. The company he kept in had a bad influence on him, and at first things didn't go well for him in the league either. And then, when he moved to another team, away from his old friends, he focused on his career and became successful. Lily never really told me much about her biological father, Pete said. Rose came up and hugged him. Please, never say biological father in front of me or her. You are her real father. Since she was 8, you have essentially replaced her father, and it can only be for her good. I am grateful that it was you who was next to her. If she ever gets married, who do you think will walk her down the aisle? It will be you. And this is an indicator of how she treats you. Pete never thought about it. A couple of months ago, he described Carrie and Eve as bridesmaids, but he had no idea who would walk Lily down the aisle. Now he realized that he would do it with pride. You're right. I just didn't look at our relationship through her eyes. I always considered her mine, but I didn't think that she also saw her real dad in me. But she sees it without any doubt. Pete digested the thought with a warm smile. Derek sent Lily nice birthday and Christmas gifts every year, but he never called or came. In the end, we both came to terms with the fact that her father was somewhere far away, and we didn't seem to mind that he didn't show up. A couple of years ago, I found out that he got married again and has 2 children. They say he has matured. I wish them all well. Before her high school graduation, he wrote her a letter apologizing for not being a good father and offering to pay for college. She agreed. She has an athletic scholarship that covers most of the expenses, and Derek pays the rest. So at least he was involved in this too. But right after graduation, she went with you and Carrie to Spain. I'm sure she never thought about him once during the whole trip. She was just enjoying her time with you. Pete plunged into memories with a smile. It was a wonderful trip. Lily actively helped me plan it. Moreover, this was the first time someone offered to help prepare our big family trip. Usually, I was in charge of everything myself. We had a great time researching where we would go and what we would see. Yes, she told me everything. And remember how I said that it was then that she stopped calling you anything other than Dad, and you never pulled her back? I'm honored that she calls me that. How could I alienate such high recognition from a person whom I love so much? Rose pressed herself closer to him. I love you, Pete. I hope that someday I will fall in love with you even more, but I already love you because you love Lily so much. He returned her hug. Thank you. As they loaded her things into her car, Rose said, without Derek's decent contract, I don't know if we would have been able to move to such an area. It worked to his advantage that the wide receivers coach he worked with in college ended up on Atlanta's staff. When one of their receivers broke his arm or elbow, that coach called Derek. It completely changed his career and life, and ours as well. Pete, having estimated the dates, asked, You said the Falcons had someone break their elbow? Was that Bobby Taylor by any chance? Rose looked at him in bewilderment. How do you know? When the girls arrived with Donnie on Sunday afternoon, they waited with bated breath to see what their parents would tell them, very much hoping for a successful outcome. Walking inside, they saw Pete and Rose preparing dinner together. Everything seemed completely natural and harmonious. There were 2 large pitchers of sangria on the kitchen island, their glasses already half empty. Pete was wearing his favorite apron that read, I like big buns and I cannot lie, and Rose was wearing an apron the girls gave her that read, chocolate, one taste is all it takes. They were both in a great mood, and the 2 of them were happily busy in the kitchen. Seeing them together, Lily immediately rushed to Pete and hugged him so tightly that she almost strangled him. I love you so much, Daddy, she exclaimed. Meanwhile, the others were hugging Rose. The evening and dinner turned out wonderful. Later, an equally wonderful night followed for the newly made couple, which was the beginning of their life together in the same house. A year later, Pete and Rose married in a small ceremony at the Rose family church. Rose's mother was delighted. Her entire family welcomed Pete and his family with open arms. A couple of her brothers laughed good-naturedly at Pete's short stature, but they knew that Pete would protect their little sister if necessary, and they respected him for how much he had done for Lily and now Rose. They honeymooned in Spain because Rose wanted to see for herself the amazing places they took the children to. When Pete jokingly remarked that he could have called her back when they were traveling with the children, she laughed and lightly slapped him on the arm. It's good that I didn't call. It will be much better there together. Pete completely agreed with her. Rose left her house and rented it out to Donnie, hoping that when Lily graduated from university, she and Donnie could settle down there together. Indeed, they moved there the following summer, after Lily graduated from Vanderbilt. Carrie entered law school, followed in her father's footsteps, and there she met a nice guy, also a future lawyer. Everything was looking promising for them. Eva entered medical school. She was in no hurry to get into a relationship. Studying took too much energy. She knew that if she worked hard, she could get a job at one of the good clinics near the Williamson Medical Center. Getting to know the Williamson family was always a bonus. As for Joan, at first she took the news of Pete and Rose's wedding painfully. But Eve, Donnie, Lily, and Carrie gave her a lot of time and love. She received some psychological help and eventually recovered from her own stupidity. For the girls' college graduation, Brian and Miriam treated everyone to an unforgettable 2 weeks in Italy. The trip was great for everyone except Joan, who had to watch Pete and Rose retire to their room together every night. She missed her former lover and her teddy bear, but she understood that she was to blame for what happened. Brian and Miriam assumed that this would not be easy for her, so they tried to pay special attention to her, although they were very happy for Pete and Rose, since they were clearly suitable for each other. In the end, everyone basically got what they deserved, which is something you rarely see in life. But the main thing is that the youth benefited, and for this reason parental love exists, even if you are not a biological parent. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. 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 Click to the next one.